Chapter 1720. The Mysterious Poison 3. When the sea turtle heard the adult dolphin call a human its master, it widened its black bean-like eyes in disbelief and stared at Lung Ruashue without blinking. Good boy. This human is so powerful. He had actually taken in a dolphin as his beast pet. One must know that the dolphin race was one of the kings of the endless sea and were famous for their pride. Therefore, he had never dreamed that he would be able to see a dolphin that recognized a human as its master in his lifetime, which made him very surprised. Let's go in. Lung Ruashue ignored the thoughts written on the turtle's face and nodded with a smile. After receiving Lung Ruakshu's order, the little dolphin didn't even look at the sea turtle and immediately rushed into the light screen. When the sea turtle saw this scene, its respect for the little dolphin immediately rose to a new height. As expected of the great dolphin, he's so courageous, the turtle thought to itself. It didn't dare to rush in like this. Then, it slowly swam back to its original position, calmly retracted its head into its turtle shell, and closed its eyes to rest. The little dolphin brought Lung Ruashue and the demon into the mystic realm and immediately stopped. Lung Ruashue and the demon jumped down from its back and started to size up the mystic realm. This mystical realm, how should he put it? Everywhere she looked was filled with the chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers. The scenery was pleasant, and the spiritual chi inside was unbelievable. However, Lung Ruashue felt a sense of disharmony. She did not know why she felt this way, but in short, this mystic realm gave her a very strange feeling. However, it was a good thing that the scenery in this secret realm was not bad. At least it would not pollute her eyes. After some thought, Lung Ruashue moved Ning Haolon and the others out of the house. This is the secret realm. Ning Haolon and the others searched the area after they came out. And Lung Ruashue nodded and reminded, "Be careful, everyone. Miss, it's quite beautiful here," Sueju said with some excitement. Her beautiful eyes looked here and there. "Wretched girl, stop embarrassing yourself, all right? The scenery here is just ordinary," Lu Tao said with some disappointment, but she couldn't help but feel disgusted in her heart. No matter how good this place was, could it be compared to the young Miss Space? Therefore, this place was not worthy of her attention. However, there were outsiders present, so there were some things she couldn't say clearly. "I know, and just a little surprised." Sueju lowered her head in embarrassment, her cheeks blushing. At this time, she suddenly saw a flower she had never seen before from the corner of her eye. The flower was the size of a palm, and the petals were red. The overlapping petals looked unusually beautiful. "What beautiful flowers!" Sueju exclaimed and ran forward, picking the flower and playing with it in her hand. "Be careful," Lung Ruashue, who felt that something was amiss, quickly reminded him. When she first entered this place, she had already sized up the entire place. She did not see any flowers at all, so she was very suspicious of the flowers that had suddenly appeared. However, her warning was too late. At the same time, the flower in Queeze's hand suddenly transformed into a red snake, as thick as a finger, and bit Queeze's snow-white wrist. Immediately after, a red light flashed, and the red snake disappeared. Sueju also fainted. All of this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Within a few short seconds, everything was over. It was so fast that Lung Ruashue and the rest could not react in time. By the time they could react, Sueju had already fainted. Everyone rushed to Queeze's side and helped her sit up. They looked nervously at Sueju, whose face was getting paler and paler. They were all worried. Looking at Queeze's appearance, they knew that she had been poisoned, but they did not know what poison it was. "Miss, is Sueju all right?" Lu Tao asked carefully as she looked at Lung Ruashue, who was examining Sueju. "Her poison is very strange. To be honest, I don't know what kind of poison it is," Lung Ruashue said helplessly after checking. "Miss, what should we do then?" Lu Tao was extremely worried. Since her young miss had said so, it meant that she definitely did not know. If even her young miss could not save Sueju, then wouldn't Sueju be? One must know that Lung Ruashue was omnipotent in her heart. However, Now that her young miss said that she had no way to cure this poison, her heart could not help but sink bit by bit. She had always treated Sueju as her younger sister. If Sueju, she did not dare to think further. Even though Lung Ruoxue was a loss on what to do with this poison, she still gave Sueju an antidote pill. She just didn't know if the antidote pill would be able to cure Qui's strange poison. After all, the antidote pill wasn't omnipotent. Some special poisons needed a specific antidote to be cured. Thanks then, she moved her little red snake out of the bracelet. Little fire, take a look at the poison in the bamboo and see if you have any way to cure it. Lung Ruoxue ordered. There were at least 1,000 types of poison in Xiao's body. She hoped that it could recognize the poison in Qui's body so that she could concoct the antidote. Oh, Xiao nodded its little head, then climbed onto Qui's body and sniffed it. Then it said to Lung Ruoxue very seriously, "Girl, I don't know what kind of poison she's been poisoned with. Why don't I bite her a few times and see if I can use poison to attack poison?" Xiao's suggestion caused Lung Ruoxue to shake her head. Using poison to attack poison wasn't suitable for all poisons. Hence, she didn't dare to take the risk. You can't even tell what poison she's suffering from. It seems that the snake that bit Sueju is much more powerful than you. At this time, Cheng Xian looked at Xiaohua with a look of disdain and made sarcastic remarks. In fact, he had met this little guy once, but this little guy was very unfriendly to him. The moment they met, he said that he wanted to bite him and that his poison could not be cured by others. Therefore, he had taken the opportunity to take a little revenge. "You demoness, what nonsense are you spouting? Do you want me to bite you? Let me tell you, it wasn't a snake that bit Sueju, because it wasn't snake venom in her body. If it's snake venom, I wouldn't be so helpless." Lil Fire roared furiously. If it was not for Lung Ruoxue holding it back, it would have rushed up to bite Cheng Xian. Dead Renyao? Cheng Xian was stunned when he heard this form of address. Although he didn't know the meaning of this word, it didn't sound like something good, so his anger rose. "You damn snake. It was clearly a snake that bit the bamboo, but you said it wasn't snake venom. It can't be that you're so ignorant that you can't tell." Cheng Xian retorted impolitely. "Fuck, would I not know if it's a snake or not? I'm a venomous snake ancestor. No one is more venomous than me." Lil Fire shouted back at the top of its lungs. Everyone looked at the man and the snake, who did not care about their image, and roared. They could not help but feel angry. They did not look at the place and the situation when they quarreled. Now that Qui's life and death were unknown, they started quarreling first. "Sai, what the hell is this? All of you shut up. If you continue to argue, it'll throw you into the house." Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes swept across the human and snake as she spoke coldly. The moment she said this, the human and snake instantly fell silent. "Great aunt, I was wrong." Cheng Xian lowered his head and quickly admitted his mistake. "Girl, I was wrong too." Lil Fire was also very perceptive, as it said. It was not easy for it to come out, and it did not want to go back so quickly. They won't quarrel anymore. Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked indifferently, "I won tea. He wouldn't tea. We're actually on very good terms." Cheng Xian said with an ingratiating smile. After he finished speaking, he even extended a hand to stroke Xiao's cold little head to show his friendliness. Although Lil Fire was extremely unwilling to be touched, in order to show that they had a good relationship, he could only resist the urge to bite and let Cheng Xian touch him. "Remember your words. If I ever find out that your relationship is not as you say, don't blame me." Lung Ruoxue feigned anger as she warned. "Great aunt, I have a very close relationship with Little Fire." In order to prove his words, Cheng Xian even specially took Little Fire from Lung Ruoxue's hands and kissed its head. Instantly, Little Fire was in a mess. Fuck, this damned transvestite actually kissed it. It wanted to vomit. He did not know if this fellow was clean or not. As long as Xiaohua thought about how it had been kissed by a man, it would be so angry that its little body would tremble. If it was not afraid that Lung Ruoxue would be angry, it would definitely teach this human a lesson. One had to know that not just anyone could kiss it. And the unlucky Chang Xian still didn't know that because of his kiss, he had already made a little snake hate him. Long Ruoxue saw that Chang Xian had gone to such lengths to prove his relationship with Lil Fire, so she didn't want to argue with him. After keeping the unconscious emerald green bamboo into the bracelet and handing it over to Qing Ju, Long Ruoxue then said to everyone, "Let's go. Be careful, this is just the beginning." Qui's injury made her feel a little heavy. However, this also strengthened her idea of finding out the truth about this mystic realm. Perhaps she could cure the poison in Qui's body by then. Everyone nodded. At the same time, they became even more vigilant. Everyone continued to move forward. Other than the flowers and grass on the side of the road, they didn't find the shadow of a human or beast. Even when the sky in the mystic realm was getting dark, they still didn't find anything. After finding a spacious area, Long Ruoxue took out the house and placed it on the ground. Then the group walked in. After dinner, the rest of them went to bed early. However, Long Ruoxue pulled the demon to sit in the garden and observed every movement in the mystic realm through the light screen. Chapter 1721. The Little Scheme of the Chung Siblings. 1. The secret realm at night was quiet and peaceful. It seemed to be safer than the outside. However, no one knew what was hidden under this calm surface. Long Ruoxue was extremely suspicious of this place. Naturally, she wouldn't believe the calm on the surface. However, she wasn't going to be on edge either. After all, no matter how dangerous it was outside, it was impossible to disturb them. The demon pulled Long Ruoxue into his arms and smiled. "Swear? Don't be afraid, no matter what kind of dragon's den or tiger's den this is. I will protect you. With you here, I'm not afraid." Long Ruoxue was very cooperative. Even though she believed in her ability to protect herself, she was still very happy to hear the words of the person she loved. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. Long Ruoxue and the demon looked at each other and then turned their attention to the screen. There were several small screens on the screen, each showing a different location. One of the small screens showed the image of the door. There was a middle-aged man at the entrance. He was tall and had a rough face. He gave off the feeling that he was a man of indomitable spirit. Furthermore, he looked like he wanted to stay overnight. Long Ruoxue and the demon looked at each other when they saw this. "Freak, do you want him to come in?" Long Ruoxue asked for the demon's opinion to prevent him from guzzling again. "Aren't you afraid that he's an enemy?" The demon raised his eyebrows and smiled. "With you here, what am I afraid of? What's more, this is my territory. If he really does anything bad after entering here, I'll be the one to suffer." Long Ruoxue said confidently. "Then let him in. After all, it's not easy to meet a person in this secret realm." The demon nodded. They had been searching for a whole day in the secret realm, but they had not seen a single person. Unexpectedly, at night, someone had taken the initiative to come to their door, although this person's motive was very suspicious. "Yes." Long Ruoxue nodded. Then, with a thought, the door of the house opened. The middle-aged man who was waiting at the entrance looked at the open door and walked in without a second thought. Long Ruoxue saw this scene through the light screen and smiled. He's quite bold to walk in like this. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. This man's strength is not ordinary. He saw through the middle-aged man's disguise and smiled mysteriously. "What?" Long Ruoxue looked at the demon thoughtfully. In her eyes, the middle-aged man was only at the God King level, but the demon seemed to be quite at ease with him. At this moment, Long Ruoxue's thoughts changed again, and the middle-aged man was moved into the garden. When he first arrived at the garden, the middle-aged man was still in a daze. However, in the blink of an eye, he regained his senses. When he saw Long Ruoxue, he was momentarily surprised, but he quickly returned to normal. "Little girl, I didn't expect to meet you again so soon." When the middle-aged man saw Long Ruoxue, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. "You are the senior who lives in the trench?" Long Ruoxue wasn't too sure, but she could clearly remember the low voice. "It's this old master." The middle-aged man nodded. "Thanks, I didn't think we would be so fated with senior." After confirming this, Long Ruoxue's heart was greatly relieved. Even though she didn't know why this senior would suddenly enter the mystic realm, she was still very happy that the first person she met here was someone she knew. I didn't expect it either. No wonder the little girl said you have a way to protect yourself, so you have such a divine tool. The middle-aged man exclaimed in surprise. Before he asked Lung Ruoxue to stay, he had doubted the authenticity of this place. Even after he had entered, he had maintained a trace of vigilance. However, with his strength, he was confident that he could deal with anything that was amiss here. Hence, after the door opened, he walked in without hesitation. However, after seeing Lung Ruoxue, he was relieved. At the same time, he was glad that he was lucky. Otherwise, he would have to sleep in the open in this unfamiliar secret realm. This house was given to me by the Armament Guild's great elder. Now, he and my godfather are trapped in the secret realm, so I have no choice but to enter the secret realm to find out what's going on. Lung Ruoxue explained. So that's how it is. Little girl, you're so loyal. It's not in vain that they dote on you. The middle-aged man praised. Originally, he had a very good impression of Lung Ruoxue. Now that he heard of Lung Ruoxue's purpose in coming to the mystic realm, his impression of her improved even more. After all, with her strength, she dared to enter this unknown mystic realm. Just based on this courage alone, she was worthy of others' respect. Senior praises me too much. In fact, the reason I dare to come here is only because I have some means of self-protection. Otherwise, with my strength, I would undoubtedly be courting death. Lung Ruoxue replied politely. Ha ha, little girl, you don't have to be so modest. Seeing how polite Lung Ruoxue was, the middle-aged man couldn't help but smile. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but wipe away the cold sweat on her forehead. She wasn't being humble, all right? She was clearly telling the truth. However, she would not argue with this mysterious expert over such a small matter. Therefore, she changed the topic and said, Senior, I'll arrange a room for you. You should rest early. Good. Sorry to trouble you, little girl, but you can call me Uncle Long. The middle-aged man reminded. Uncle Long, this way please. After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking, she brought Uncle Long to the guest room. The next day, when Fengde and the others walked out of the room, they were surprised to find a stranger in the house. Lung Ruoxue took the initiative to introduce them to each other when she saw the surprised expressions on their faces. Hello, Uncle Long. Fengde and the others bowed politely. Ha ha, no need to be so polite, Uncle Long quickly said. Then, he turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, Little girl, your subordinates have good aptitudes and have great potential. Although Fengde and the other's strength was not high, he was quite optimistic about these young people. At this moment, the little dolphin ran out from the bracelet. Of course, it was the one who had strongly requested Lung Ruoxue to let it out to meet this legendary figure. Seeing a mini dolphin circling him curiously, Uncle Long's face darkened. Finally, he couldn't help but say, Little guy, have you seen enough? Is there grass on my face? For you to look at it so carefully. Hearing Uncle Long's teasing, the little dolphin was greatly provoked. Was this the legendary master with a bad temper? How? How did this happen? Was there a mistake somewhere? The elders of their families didn't describe it like that. Or was it a fake? At this thought, the little dolphin suspiciously sized up Uncle Long again. Little guy, if you keep looking at me like that, I won't give your master any face. Uncle Long threatened. In other words, he was saying, if you continue to size me up, it'll teach you a lesson. Chapter 1722. The little scheme of the Chung siblings, too. When the little dolphin heard this, its suspended heart was slightly relieved. It looked like he was still that old. Senior. It was just that he was giving face to his master, so he put on such an affable appearance. After confirming, the little dolphin ran back to its master's arms, not even looking at Uncle Long. AI, who asked Uncle Long's reputation to be so frightening. There was no one in the entire endless sea who wasn't afraid of him. After everyone was done looking around, Uncle Long turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, Little girl, where do you plan to go next? We don't have any purpose, so we just go wherever we want. Lung Ruoxue answered honestly. In reality, she really did not know where to go. Yesterday, they had been wandering around the secret realm like headless flies for an entire day. It was a pity that they had not found anything. In that case, let's go together. I have a talent that can find places with people. Therefore, everyone can take fewer detours. Uncle Long explained. After all, he was very clear that Lung Ruoxue and the others had come in to look for someone. That was his purpose as well. Really? That's great. When Lung Ruoxue heard that Uncle Long had such a talent, she was overjoyed. In this secret realm, Qing Ju's abilities could not be displayed at all. Otherwise, they would not have wandered around the place yesterday. Furthermore, if Uncle Long's talent was really that useful, it would be much easier for them to find someone. Ha ha! Otherwise, how do you think I found you guys yesterday? Uncle Long laughed out loud. Lung Ruoxue's shock had lifted his mood. Uncle Long, they'll have to trouble you to take care of her in this secret realm. Lung Ruoxue said, trying to please him. Her words had indeed pleased Uncle Long. Ha ha ha, good, as long as you can give me more food. Uncle Long said with a drooling face. He hadn't eaten human food for many years, and he was still brooding over the taste of that breakfast. He couldn't help but drool even when he thought about it. Uncle Long, I have a lot of food here, so you can eat as much as you want. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Little girl, you said it yourself. Uncle Long has a huge appetite. If I really eat too much, don't be reluctant to part with me. Uncle Long said the ugly words first. He didn't eat his fill in the morning. I want tea. You can eat as much as you want, Uncle Long. Lung Ruoxue promised. In reality, she didn't think that Uncle Long's appetite would be that big. However, after interacting with him for a few days, she realized that she was wrong. It turned out that Uncle Long's appetite was ridiculously huge. After the introductions, everyone chatted for a while more before they continued on their way. 3 days later, Lung Ruoxue and the rest still did not see a single person. Uncle Long, it's been 3 days. Why haven't I seen anyone yet? Fonda walked to Uncle Long's side and couldn't help but ask. In the past 3 days, they had become very familiar with Uncle Long, so it was quite easy for him to ask such a question. What's wrong? You can't wait anymore? Uncle Long raised his eyebrows and smiled. A little. It's already been 3 days, and we haven't even seen a single person. There's no way to ask anyone about the situation here, sigh. Fonda sighed. Little brat. I've said it before, there are people in front of us. However, you can't teleport here, otherwise I would have brought you there to find them long ago. Uncle Long explained patiently. Thanks, Uncle Long. How much longer do we have to walk? When Lin Yuan heard this, he could not help but ask. Half a day more. We'll probably see them tonight. Uncle Long looked at the sky and estimated. Then let's hurry, Lin Yuan urged. Ha ha, don't worry. They can't run. Uncle Long sensed and said with great certainty. In this secret realm, both teleportation and divine sense were useless. Therefore, unless one had the same talent as him, it was almost impossible to find a person. Moreover, he could sense that the few humans 10,000 meters away were in a tense state. They had finally found a seemingly safe place and would not leave easily. Thus, he was not in a hurry at all. However, seeing that Fonda and the others seemed to be in a hurry, he had to speed up. As Uncle Long had expected, they finally arrived at their destination in the evening. It was a small hill that was half the height of a person. At this time, there were 8 people resting there. 7 men and 1 woman among the 8 people looked extremely miserable. After seeing them, they clenched the weapons in their hands vigilantly and stared at them with an unfriendly gaze. Who are you people? The one who spoke was a young master who looked to be in his early 20s. Although he was very handsome, his disheveled appearance greatly reduced his handsomeness. Cheng-yi, what are you doing here? Cheng Xian, who was walking in the middle of Fonda and the others, said in surprise when he saw the man who spoke. Young master, you're here too? When Cheng-yi saw Cheng Xian, he felt a little upset. They were both geniuses of the Cheng family, but their positions were different. Cheng Xian was the young master of the Cheng family, while he was only one of the geniuses in the younger generation of the Cheng family. With Cheng Xian around, all his brilliance was overshadowed. Everyone only saw the dazzling young master of the Chung family. As for him, a genius whose aptitude was no less than the young masteress, almost no one paid attention to him. Therefore, ever since he was sensible, he had been jealous of Chang Xian from the bottom of his heart. Now, they were both in the secret realm. He was in a sorry state, but the clothes on Chang Xian's body were not even wrinkled. What was even more unacceptable to him was that he could not see Chang Xian's strength. What did this mean? He didn't dare to think too deeply. At this time, the woman beside him couldn't help but speak. "Big brother, young master, I didn't expect to see you here. Xian is so happy." The woman named Xian said. Chang Xian looked at the woman in front of him and frowned. He didn't expect to see them here. The two people talking were brother and sister, and they were cousins who were closer to him. However, he never liked to be close to them. After seeing them here, he was more unhappy. Did the old ancestor bring them here? That old man wouldn't be so brainless to bring these two burdens here, right? Chang Xian couldn't help but think in his heart. However, when he saw the other people around Chang Yi and his sister, he understood that they must have heard the news from somewhere and came here by themselves. The people around them were the elders of Chang Yi's maternal grandfather, the CEO family. Young Master Chang, long time no see. Sensing Chang Xian's gaze, the most powerful elder among the elders spoke. "Third Elder Chao, what are you doing here?" Chang Xian asked directly. Although he had already guessed the truth, he still had to pretend to be surprised. Chapter 1723. The Little Scheme of the Chung Siblings. 3. We happened to learn about the secret realm, so the clan leader sent us here to explore. But we didn't expect this place to be so dangerous. The CEO family's third elder said with a lingering fear. When he saw Chang Xian and the people around him, his heart that had been hanging for a long time finally relaxed a little. Although the strength of the people Chang Xian had brought was not very high, it was still better than their entire army being annihilated and becoming a commander of light. I see. Chang Xian knew that the cunning old man wasn't telling the whole truth, but he didn't bother to expose him. Instead, he politely replied, "Young Master Chang, are they the subordinates you brought here?" The third elder of the CEO family looked at the person beside Chang Xian and asked curiously, "No, they are my friends." Chang Xian chuckled. "Big brother, young master, you're the young master of the Chang family. How can you make friends so casually? Besides, even if he wanted to make friends, he should at least make friends with people of similar strength and family background. These people are not worthy of being your friends." Hearing this, Chang Xian immediately said in dissatisfaction, "Xian, don't talk nonsense. It's the young master's right to make friends with whoever he wants. We have no right to ask." When Chang Yi heard Chang Xian's words, his heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, "It's over. Xian's mouth is going to ruin things." In the current situation, what they needed the most was an alliance, and the other side had so many people, which was exactly what he wanted. Thus, he was very afraid that Xian's words would anger them. So before Chang Xian could respond, he rushed to scold him. "Big brother, how can we not have a right to ask? This is related to our Chung family's face. If young Lord Big Brother makes some shady friends, ITLL be our Chung family that'll lose face." Chang Xian heard her own brother blaming her for an outsider, and her heart was filled with dissatisfaction. "You have no right to ask what kind of friends I make. As for whether or not we'll lose face for the Chung family, it's not something that can be decided with just a few words," Chang Xian said coldly. As he spoke, he couldn't help but steal a glance at Lung Ruoxue and the others. He knew the background of these people and knew how cruel and merciless they were. However, he wasn't afraid that Lung Ruoxue and the others would do anything to Chang Xian in a fit of anger. Instead, he was afraid that Lung Ruoxue and the others would blame him for this. If that happened, the heavens would take pity on him. This really had nothing to do with him. He was innocent. After making sure that Lung Ruoxue and the others weren't angry at Chang Xian's words, he finally felt at ease. However, he still felt a little guilty. After all, Chang Xian was a member of the Chung family. Actually, it wasn't that Lung Ruoxue and the rest weren't angry. It was just that they felt that there was no need to be calculative with a brain-damaged woman since they were in the mystic realm. After all, the mystic realm was the place they should be most concerned about. As for this brain-damaged woman, they would just let her run her own course. They didn't need to be too concerned. Young Master Chung, Sienna has always been direct. I hope you don't mind. The CEO family's third elder saw that Chung Xian's expression was a little ugly, and he secretly glared at Chung Xian, who didn't understand the situation, and tried to smooth things over. I know she's direct, so I can let her go no matter what she thinks. After all, we're all members of the Chung family. How can there be overnight hatred? However, the person she mentioned just now is my friend, so I can't just ignore this. Chung Xian said very seriously. Hearing Chung Xian's words, Elder Chao Sen hurriedly said to Chung Xian, Sienna, quickly apologized to young Master Cheng's friends. Third Grandpa, I didn't do anything wrong. Why do you want me to apologize? Chung Xian said with an aggrieved expression. What you said just now was very impolite, so you must apologize. Chao Sanzhong raised his face and said in an extremely displeased manner. When they first entered the secret realm, they had brought no less than 100 people with them. Although the majority of them were god kings, almost all of them had died in less than a month. This fact had given him a whole new understanding of the secret realm. As a result, he was rather excited when he saw Chung Xian bring so many people. What did this mean? This meant that their chances of survival had increased. In this secret realm, there was no lack of experts. However, there was a lack of cannon fodder. And now, Fengde and the others had become excellent cannon fodder in his eyes. That was why he was so strict with Chung Xian. He didn't want them to run away in anger because of Xian Er's rudeness. It was not easy to see a person here. I'm telling the truth. You want me to apologize? No way. Chung Xian Er's eyes were slightly red, and tears were welling up in her beautiful eyes. It was as if she would be flooded with water if third Elder Chao said a word to her. As the young miss of the Chung family, she was now being reprimanded by an elder of her mother's family. To be honest, she felt very unbalanced in her heart. However, who asked her mother to have a low status in the family? They had to rely on the power of their mother's family to stand firm in the Chung family. This decided that they had to look at the face of their maternal family sometimes, even if they were from the Chung family. As for their maternal ancestor, the CEO family, although it was not ranked among the 8 great divine regions, it could still be considered a top-tier family in the divine realm. Furthermore, it had been passed down for many years. As a result, its status in the divine realm was only second to the 8 great divine regions. The siblings relied on the maternal family in many ways. That was why the elders of the maternal family dared to reprimand her in front of outsiders. This fact also made her quite angry. Thanks seeing Chung Xian Er's stubbornness, third Elder Chao had no choice but to send a voice transmission to Chung Xian Er. He explained the relationship between the two parties and asked her to put the overall situation first. After Chung Xian heard third Elder Chao's explanation, she unwillingly lowered her noble head. I'm sorry for being impolite just now. Chung Xian Er's face was slightly red as she said in embarrassment. She was indeed a young lady from an aristocratic family. She was very flexible and could bow and stretch. When she apologized, she looked very sincere. However, the flash of resentment in her eyes was still caught by Lung Ruoxue, who was watching coldly from the side. AI. It seemed that the acting skills of the young masters and young ladies of the big families were extraordinary. It was a pity that there were no Oscar awards in the divine realm. Otherwise, she would definitely award the best actor and best actress to them. With such acting skills, it would be a waste if they were not stars. Lung Ruoxue secretly thought to herself, but her beautiful eyes were sizing up the Chung siblings. They had some similarities with Chung Xian in terms of appearance. If Chung Yi had not been in such a sorry state, he would have been an elegant young master. As for Miss Chung, she was as beautiful as a flower and could cause the downfall of a city. Coupled with her sorry appearance, it would make men cherish her more. However, The men around her who did not know how to be tender to women were exceptions. As she thought of this, her beautiful eyes turned to Ning Haolon, who was hidden among the crowd. She thought to herself, this guy seems to be a man who knows how to take care of women. I just don't know if this Miss Chung is his type. Sensing Lung Ruoxu's gaze, Ning Haolon broke out in a cold sweat. What was this woman trying to do by sizing him up? He was so scared. Just as Ning Haolon's heart was in a mess, Chung Xian saw that her apology didn't get a response from the other party, and she became even more furious. These people really didn't know what was good for them. The dignified Miss Chung apologized to them, but they completely ignored her. This made her feel like she had lost face, and the anger in her heart slowly brewed and burned. I'm sorry. I was being rude just now. Chung Xian suppressed her anger and repeated, it doesn't matter. We can understand that Miss Chung is doing this for young Master Cheng's sake. After all, it's really unfair for us to befriend young Master Chung with our status. Seeing that no one wanted to pay attention to this Miss Chung, Lung Ruoxue could only reply with kindness. Lung Ruoxu's words made Chung Xian break out in cold sweat. When Chung Xian heard Lung Ruoxu's reply, she felt a sense of relief in her heart. The woman who spoke seemed to know her place. She liked this kind of woman. However, when she saw Lung Ruoxu's face, she did not like her that much. Damn it, how could this woman be so beautiful? And the man beside her was simply a match made in heaven with her. The two of them stood together, so well-matched and extremely eye-catching. However, looking at their clothes, she also knew that they were not from top family. With this thought in mind, her heart felt a little more balanced. Moreover, she found another familiar face among them. Brother Lan, it's really you. Chung Xian ignored Lung Ruoxu's words as she looked at Ning Haolon in disbelief. Her beautiful cheeks were a little pink as she lowered her head shyly. In fact, she was actually comparing Ning Haolon to the demonic man she had seen earlier. Brother Lan was the young master of the Ning family, the future head of the family. His future was limitless, and that devilish man definitely could not compare to Brother Lan in terms of status and strength. The only advantage he had over Brother Lan was that beautiful face that was unforgettable. However, no matter how beautiful a man was, if he did not have the corresponding strength and status to add color, he was just a vase. And what was the use of having such a man? Comparing the two, the scales in her heart naturally leaned towards Ning Haolon. As for that woman, other than being more beautiful than her strength and family background were definitely not comparable to hers. After thinking about it this way, her jealousy towards Lung Ruoxue faded. After all, she valued a man's strength and status more, because it meant that she would have the chance to share this honor. As she thought about it, the smile on her face became more and more charming. The way she looked at Ning Haolon became more and more affectionate. When Lung Ruoxue saw her like this, she knew that she had fallen for Ning Haolon. It was still all right. Lung Ruoxue heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he didn't have any ideas about the evildoer, as for which man Chung Xian had taken a fancy to, that was none of her business. Chapter 1724, Greed 1. Lung Ruoxue was relieved, but Ning Haolon was conflicted. He knew that his status was an irresistible attraction to some women. However, this Chung Xian heir's direct and unconcealed gaze on him still caused him to feel an indescribable irritation. Although there were many women who were interested in him, it was rare for her to be so direct. However, because she was a member of the Chung family, Ning Haolon had to give the Chung family some face even if he was angry. Seeing Ning Haolon remain silent after hearing her words, Chung Xian felt a little upset. However, she knew that the young master of the Ning family never liked to talk, so she didn't mind too much. After all, in her eyes, women should take the initiative. Wasn't there a saying that went take the initiative? There was a thin veil between a woman and a man, and since there was only one veil, she had to break it no matter what. At this thought, she walked over to Ning Haolon's side, her smile as bright as a spring flower, and said gently, "Brother Lan, it's so good to meet you here. With that, she lowered her head shyly, not daring to look at Ning Haolon. Seeing her like this, Cheng Xian was full of disdain. Stop pretending. It's not like Hao Lan didn't know what she was. In fact, the young masters of the 8 great divine regions had heard about the character of the young ladies of each family. After all, one of them could become the marriage partner of the family in the future. Therefore, when they were very young, people would gradually report the situation of the young ladies of each family to them. As for those daughters from rich families, although many of them were good at acting, even good actors would reveal their flaws sometimes. Therefore, it was not easy for those young ladies to hide their true nature. As for this Cheng Xian, she was one of the most outstanding in acting. On the outside, she appeared to be a dignified and virtuous woman, well-behaved and cute, but in reality, she was quite overbearing in private. Moreover, she was a woman with a strong desire for power and a strong sense of vanity. However, she had probably suffered a great shock in the secret realm, so she had almost exposed her true nature just now. But no matter how she tried to hide it, it was useless. This was because Hao Lan would never like her. What a coincidence! The corner of Ning Haolan's mouth twitched slightly as a form of greeting. Yup, Brother Lan, it's better to meet by chance than to invite you. Since we've met, it's fate. Let's go together in the future. Cheng Xian said passionately. At this moment, there was only Ning Haolan in her heart and in her eyes. No one else was worthy of her attention, including Cheng Xian. Miss Cheng, I'm here with my friend. Ning Haolan said in a soft voice. He was trying to say, I can't leave my friend behind to be with you. However, Cheng Xian wouldn't be able to read between the lines. In other words, even if she did, she would ignore it. It doesn't matter. Since we're fated to meet, we can travel together. Without waiting for Cheng Xian to speak, the third elder of the CAO family spoke first. Furthermore, his words were a statement and not a question. It was clear that he didn't want to give Lung Ruoxue and the others a chance to reject. After all, cannon fodder was hard to come by. When Ning Haolan heard this, he suppressed his displeasure and looked at Lung Ruoxue and the others. When he saw Lung Ruoxue nod, he said, All right then, since Third Elder Chao has graciously invited us, we'll respectfully accept. However, if we find any treasures in the secret plane, how are we going to split them among so many of us? Then, Ning Haolan changed the topic and revealed the fact that the third elder of the CAO family had deliberately ignored. Naturally, it will be distributed according to contribution. The CAO family's third elder said after thinking for a moment. The reason why he said this was because he had too few people on his side. If it was distributed according to the number of people, his side would definitely suffer a loss. If it was distributed according to the contribution, his strength was clearly above theirs. They had already agreed on the distribution method in advance, so when it was really time to distribute it, presumably they would not be able to say anything. Therefore, the third elder of the CAO family, who thought that his plan was flawless, suggested this fair distribution method. Thanks when Lung Ruoxue heard the words of the CAO family's third elder, she chuckled and said, This distribution method is very fair. Let's do it this way. In fact, she didn't think that she would be able to find anything good here. Hee, I still don't know young Lattice's name. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue had made the final decision and that no one else had objected, the CAO family's third elder was suspicious. Did this woman's words carry so much weight? He was surprised that young Master Ning and young Master Cheng didn't have any objections. My surname is Lung, Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Cold. Upon hearing this surname, Elder Chao San racked his brain, but still could not think of any top family in the divinity with the surname Lung. Our Lung clan has yet to establish a clan in the divinity. Lung Ruoxue explained when she saw the doubt in Third Elder Chao's eyes. Oh, Lung Ruoxue's words caused Third Elder Chao's enthusiasm towards her to drop. He had originally thought that since she was close to young Master Ning and young Master Cheng, she was also a young lady from some top family. Who knew that he was actually a rogue cultivator who didn't even have a family? But this was good too. People without a family background were easy to mess with, right? The CEO family's third elder saw that Lung Ruoxue and the others were of no value to him, so he treated them coldly and turned to Ning Haolan instead. He walked to Ning Haolan's side and started chatting with him with a smile on his face. Lung Ruoxue and the others saw this and tactfully walked to a corner. They each found a seat and sat down. Grape and the others even took out some food to prepare for dinner. Miss, this whatever third elder Chow is really looking down on people. Feng said indignantly. Isn't this just right? I don't intend to have any deep friendship with them. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Hee, this little girl is still the most open-minded one, kid. You haven't trained enough. One must know that no matter where one was, there would always be people with eyes on top of their heads, so it was better to stay calm. Besides, these people aren't worth your time. Uncle Long said earnestly. In fact, other than being able to find out where there were people here, he was also very talented in recognizing people. Thus, he only needed a glance to know that he could only make use of these people from the CEO family. I'm very calm, and I don't want to make friends with them. I just think that this person is a little too realistic. Once they heard that we didn't have a family, they ignored us. Fonda was a little speechless. He had seen many people in his life, but this was the first time he had seen such a realistic person. In the divinity, family is very important. If a cultivator without any background wants to stand out, he must have someone to rely on. Otherwise, why do you think so many experts want to rely on a more powerful top force? It's precisely because those powers can provide them with even better resources that many experts would rather be a guest minister in a top clan than wander around the divine realm alone. Furthermore, the greatest benefit of having an attachment is that it will make the enemy forget about them. Uncle Long said with a smile. Chapter 1725, Greed 2. Oh, what if the enemy is so powerful that even the family they are attached to is afraid of them? Fonda asked curiously. Hearing Feng Da's question, Uncle Long was stunned. Not many people would be stupid enough to make such an enemy. If he really did, it could only be considered as bad luck. Under such circumstances, the family could only choose to sacrifice him. Then aren't the people who are sacrificed very pitiful? Fonda said with a hint of sympathy. That can't be helped. Even if the one who got into this trouble was a direct clansman, there's no room for discussion about the sacrifice, let alone a guest attached to his own family. Uncle Long sighed. This was the tragedy of a big family. If we get into big trouble, my lady will never choose to sacrifice us. Fonda said with certainty after hearing what Uncle Long said. How many people do you think are like this little girl in this world? Uncle Long asked, a little speechless. After interacting with them for a few days, he had a basic understanding of these people and was also very clear of Lung Ruoxue's position in the hearts of her subordinates. However, that little girl was indeed a person worthy of trust, and his impression of Lung Ruoxue was also very good. There were only a few. Moreover, when our forces grow stronger in the future, only hierarch-level cultivators can be our guest elders. We don't even want a divine emperor. Fonda said happily. Reverend God. Uncle Long's eyes widened as he laughed and scolded. You really dare to think. The Reverend God-level cultivators in the divine world, including humans and magical beasts, are less than 100 people. Moreover, all the major forces regard Reverend God-level cultivators as their clan treasures. Do you think a Reverend God-level cultivator will want to be a guest? Even in the 8 great divine domains and the 4 great royal families of the magical beasts, hierarch-level and hierarch-level divine beasts are all ancestor-level divine beasts. Which family do you think would let their own ancestor be a guest minister? Feng Da's whimsical thinking made Uncle Long feel very helpless. However, he quite admired this little guy's courage to think like this. Thinking about things that others didn't dare to think about was also a kind of courage. Are there any reverent gods in the divine realm? Lung Ruoxue suddenly asked after hearing what Uncle Long had to say. The so-called reclusive hierarch was an expert who kept a low profile and was not known to the public. Even if he had broken through, he had not told the world. There There are many low-profile and mysterious forces in the divine world, and the hierarch gods of those forces are almost unknown to the public. Even the people of those forces are very low-profile, but their reputation is not small. And these forces, whose details are unknown, are often the ones you can offend the most. Uncle Long said seriously, "Little girl, when walking in the divine world, the most important thing is to endure. Do not offend people easily. Even if you have to provoke them, do not leave behind any evidence. You must eliminate the roots, or else there will be endless trouble in the future." Uncle Long added, and Lung Ruashua nodded. At this moment, the food for the grapes was almost done. The fragrance quickly attracted the attention of the third elder and the rest. Elder Chow Sin squinted his eyes as a glint flashed across them. He had not expected that these people would have such fresh food in their hands. It was really infuriating to compare. Before they entered the secret realm, because they had fantasized too much about this place, they had not brought any other food except for some dry food. They had originally thought that if they were hungry, they could at least get some beast meat to eat. In the end, they did not even see the shadow of a beast. They had been here for almost a month, and they had eaten a lot of dry food for several days. Fortunately, with their cultivation, they would not feel hungry even if they did not eat. However, they had cultivated from ordinary people after all. Therefore, food was an indispensable thing for them. Although they did not eat it every day, they would occasionally satisfy their craving for food. Thanks to dry rations that they had brought with them were not enough to pique their interest. However, the food that these people had prepared had attracted their cravings. The smell alone was enough to make them drool. Even if they were at home, they would not be able to make such delicious food. At the same time, Elder Chow Sin walked towards Lung Ruashue and the rest and sat down beside them. He then said, "What did you make? It smells so good." "It's just some simple food. It's not worth mentioning," Lung Ruashua chuckled. To be able to make such simple food so delicious, his skills are not ordinary. Elder Chow Sin praised, but his eyes were fixed on the pot in Green Peach's hand. "Third Elder Chow has spoken too much. Let's use some together," Lung Ruashua said helplessly. This old man must have been hungry for a long time. His eyes were actually green with greed when he saw food. She wondered if they would snatch it from her if she did not take the initiative to invite them to eat. Hee, then we won't be polite. After Elder Chow San finished speaking, he actually took the initiative to pick up the bowl of green peach and filled it up for himself. When the other members of the Cao family saw this, they didn't stand on ceremony either because the taste of the food was really too tempting. When Lu Tao saw that they did not treat her as an outsider, her heart was burning with anger. However, when she received Lung Ruakshu's comforting gaze, she forcibly suppressed it. However, she couldn't understand why her young miss would tolerate them so much. These people clearly looked down on them, and now they were here to snatch their food without caring about their face. They were really too shameless. When she thought of this, her face became serious. After finishing their dinner with an unpleasant expression, Lu Tao and the rest were preparing to set up their tents to rest. However, they saw Lung Ruashua taking out a house and placing it on the empty ground. Instantly, everyone became nervous. "What's wrong with Miss? Why did he take out the house when there were outsiders?" Fonda and the others were dumbfounded. Why was the young miss so high profile? This wasn't like the young miss. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in turmoil. However, Uncle Long was very calm. When he saw Lung Ruashua take out the house, he smiled in admiration and walked straight in. Elder Chow San and the others were equally dumbfounded. As soon as the house appeared, they were all stunned. Their mouths were half open, and they didn't react for a long time. When they came back to their senses, they all rubbed their eyes in unison, afraid that everything in front of them was an illusion. However, after confirming it, they believed that the house in front of them was real. After confirming the authenticity of the house, the experienced and knowledgeable Elder Chow San suddenly recalled that there seemed to be a kind of legendary spatial divine artifact that could allow people to live in the shape of a house. However, It was said that the materials used to refine this divine artifact were extremely difficult to find. Moreover, in this world, the craftsmen who could refine spatial divine artifacts that could allow people to live and were as rare as phoenix feathers and Chelan horns. So, who had refined this house? His heart was filled with question marks. For a moment, the CEO family's third elder's heart was filled with all sorts of feelings. The sourness in his heart rose uncontrollably from the bottom of his heart. He was jealous. Moreover, he was extremely jealous. A little girl without any status or status like her actually possessed a spatial-type divine artifact that could make people in the divine realm go crazy for. This was truly too inconceivable. What right did she have? Chapter 1726. Greed 3. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The third elder of the CEO family was so jealous that he was about to go crazy. If this divine tool was owned by the young master of the Chung family or the young master of the Ning family, perhaps he would feel more balanced in his heart. After all, their status was there. It wasn't strange to have something good. However, such a divine weapon had actually fallen into the hands of a little girl with low strength, no status, and no status. This made him feel extremely unbalanced in his heart. In fact, from his point of view, if this divine weapon could be owned by him, the effect it could display would definitely be much greater than if it was in Lung Ruoxu's hands. Furthermore, if their Chao family had this spatial-type divine weapon, their status in the divinity would probably be even higher. It was not impossible for them to become the 9th great divine realm, even in this secret realm. If they had that divine artifact in their hands, they would be like tigers that had grown wings, and their chances of survival in the secret realm would also greatly increase. The many benefits made third Elder Chao's heart move. Thinking of this, his heart was filled with greed. Young Lady Lung, if I'm not wrong, this house should be the legendary spatial-type divine artifact, right? The CEO family's third elder deliberately put on a surprised expression and asked very cautiously. Third elder, Chao has a good eye, not bad. This is the legendary spatial artifact that can allow people to live in it. Lung Ruoxue replied with a smile. Her words caused a few people from the CEO family who had just reacted to the situation to widen their eyes in shock. After all, if it wasn't for the fact that the third elder had told them the truth, they wouldn't have dared to think in that direction. May I ask Miss Lung, how did you get this divine artifact? Elder Chao San asked curiously. Even though he knew that his question was a little abrupt, he could not help but ask. I spent a large amount of money to ask the craftsman from the Craftsmen's Guild to help me refine it. For this divine artifact, I went bankrupt. Lung Ruoxue complained. If I can get such a divine weapon by going bankrupt, it's worth it. Third Elder Chao said enviously. Even if the CEO family were to go bankrupt, they would not be able to obtain all the materials needed to refine this divine weapon. When he thought of this, he became even more jealous of Lung Ruoxue. Why was her luck so good? However, her good luck is also coming to an end. Elder Chao San thought to himself hatefully. Third Elder Chao, we plan to sleep inside today. As for you, if you're interested, you can also come in and sleep. Lung Ruoxue invited him enthusiastically. Then I'll have to thank Miss Lung. Elder Chao San thought for a moment and agreed. Even though there was a certain risk in entering an own divine weapon, they had been on high alert for a while. Everyone was on edge, and their minds were in a state of tension. This was extremely disadvantageous to them who were in the secret realm. Hence, they really needed a good rest. Moreover, with Chengxian around, he believed that Lung Ruoxue would not dare to harm them, even if she gave Chengxian face. Please, Fengde, arrange rooms for Elder Chao San and the others. Lung Ruoxue ordered. Yes, Fengde replied, unwillingly. Then he said to Elder Chao San and the others, Third Elder Chao, they'll take you to the guest room. Thank you for your trouble. Elder Chao San cupped his hands in a slight bow. As she watched the CEO family and the Chung family siblings leave, Lu Tao pouted and asked in confusion, Miss, why'd you take out the house and let them move in? I think that whatever third elder clearly doesn't have good intentions. When he sees this house, he might even be tempted by the money. She was very worried. What are you afraid of? I'm the owner of this house, and since they've moved in, they naturally have to listen to my arrangements. Lung Ruoxue said disapprovingly. Go and rest. The most important thing is to take care of your spirit. Lung Ruoxue continued. After she finished speaking, she pulled the evildoer back to her room. In the room, the evildoer hugged Lung Ruoxue and chuckled. Shue, aren't you afraid that they'll have bad intentions and want to take this house for themselves? Thanks, even if they have the intention, they have to have the ability. Lung Ruoxue said with confidence. Actually, she was willing to let those people stay here not because she was kind, but because she felt that it was not easy to meet someone in this mystic realm. Moreover, she had yet to figure out the true appearance of this mystic realm, and she had not found her godfather and the rest. Hence, if she could get along with these people, it was not impossible to temporarily work together with them. Now, it all depended on whether these people could withstand her test. While Lung Ruoxue and the demon were chatting, Cheng Xian, who was in the guest room, could not calm down. After Cheng Xian, had washed up, she started pacing back and forth in the guest room. Her heart couldn't calm down no matter what, and her jealousy towards Lung Ruoxue had been reignited. What right did that woman have to possess such a divine weapon? Looking at the decorations in the guest room, all of them were carefully selected. The decorations inside were not inferior to those in her boudoir. Just the guest room alone was so exquisite. One could imagine how luxurious the master room would be. The more she thought about it, the more she couldn't control the jealousy in her heart. Actually, she was wrong. The decorations in Lung Ruoxue's master's room were not as good as the guest room. Lung Ruoxue had always liked a simple and clear style. Hence, the decorations in her room were pitifully few. It was just that they were more exquisite in comparison. However, one's jealousy could not be controlled. At this moment, Cheng Xian'er's heart was being devoured by the poison known as jealousy. No matter how she thought about it, she felt that Lung Ruoxue, that lowly woman, was not worthy of possessing this divine weapon. Only she, a direct descendant of the Cheng family, had the right to possess such a divine weapon. Although she and the third elder of the Xiao family had not discussed it, the two of them had coveted this house at the same time, and her desires seemed to be stronger. Thinking of this, she turned around and left the room, pushing open the door next door. The person in the room next door was her brother. Seeing Cheng Xian enter uninvited, Cheng Yi, who was currently wearing his clothes and had his upper body bare, revealed an uncomfortable expression. Xiana, why didn't you knock before you came in? Cheng Yi hastily put on his clothes and said unhappily, Big brother, I'm your little sister. What are you being shy about? Cheng Xian looked at her brother's expression and said disapprovingly, Then you should knock. Cheng Yi said, leaving no room for discussion. All right, big brother, I was wrong. Cheng Xian didn't want to anger her brother over such a small matter, so she hurriedly apologized. Following that, she very seriously said, I have something important to discuss with you. What is it? Seeing Cheng Xian'er's serious expression, Cheng Yi asked in confusion, Big brother, what do you think of this divine artifact? Cheng Xian was afraid that the walls had ears, so she directly transmitted her voice. Of course it's good. This is a legendary spatial divine weapon. Not everyone can possess it. Cheng Yi replied. Chapter 1727, Greed for What If? This divine artifact can belong to us? Cheng Xian carefully probed. She didn't know if her brother would agree with her idea, but she knew that very few people could resist the temptation of such a divine weapon. You want to buy it from Miss Lung? Cheng Yi looked at his sister and asked. This was something that she had to go bankrupt to get. He didn't think that she would sell it. Buy? I'm afraid we can't afford it. Cheng Xian laughed evilly. She thought to herself, this brother of mine is really honest at times. He actually thought of buying it. Even if he wanted to buy it, where would they find so much money? Then how do you want to get it? Cheng Yi's face was full of question marks. As long as that woman surnamed Lung dies, her divine weapon will become ownerless. At that time, want to belong to us? Chung Xian'er said, You think too easily. She has so many people around her. Do you think you can kill her? Chung Xian'er's words made Chung Yi speechless. Although he was also somewhat envious of that divine tool, he knew his own limits and would not delude himself for such a ridiculous thing. In addition, he had always been a cautious person, so although he was envious of that divine tool, he had never thought of taking it for himself. Thus, his little sister's thoughts made him feel quite uneasy. The people around her aren't very strong, so it's easy to deal with them. However, I've never thought of killing her personally. Chung Xian'er laughed evilly. With Brother Lan here, how could she possibly let him see her dark side? In front of Brother Lan, she would always be the well-behaved and cute Xian'er. Then what do you want? Chung Yi was shocked and asked nervously. The monsters in this secret realm should like them a lot. Chung Xian'er laughed evilly as she spoke her thoughts. You're crazy. If we really attract those monsters here, we'll lose our lives. Chung Xian'er's crazy thoughts caused Chung Yi's heart to beat wildly, and his face turned as black as ink. Even now, he still had a lingering fear of those monsters. He couldn't even hide from them. His little sister actually wanted to use them to kill Lung Ruoxue and the rest. How is this possible? How could those mindless monsters that only knew how to kill listen to his sister? This was simply wishful thinking. We won T. As long as those monsters kill Lung Ruoxue first, this house will belong to me. Once it recognizes its master, we'll be safe hiding inside. Chung Xian'er said confidently, Can you guarantee that the monsters will kill them first? Chung Yi suppressed his anger and asked. His sister's idea was too stupid. He would never agree to it no matter what. After all, they had already experienced the dangers of this mystery realm. Therefore, what they needed the most now was allies, and not greed at the sight of wealth. If they could not even keep their lives, what was the use of obtaining many treasures? Only a fool would do something like that. Thanks, although I'm not 100% sure. We can think of a way. Chung Xian'er said, Xian'er, I won't allow you to have any ideas about this divine weapon. In this secret realm, the first thing we have to do is to ensure our survival. Therefore, we must get along well with them. Only then will our chances of survival increase greatly. After listening to Chung Xian'er's words, Chung Yi sternly warned her. Scheming against an ally and scheming at the sight of wealth was an extremely unwise move in this dangerous secret realm, so he would not allow Chung Xian'er to have such thoughts. All right, we'll just give up. Seeing that her brother did not agree, and his attitude was very unyielding, she could only go along with it. Xian'er, it's also a good thing for us that Miss Lung has this divine weapon. At least, we don't have to be so afraid when we're with them, and our chances of survival have increased. Therefore, we must treat them as allies and work together in this secret realm. Only in this way can we leave this place alive. Chung Yi was afraid that his sister was still thinking about other people's divine artifacts, so he had to make his words more clear. I know. Chung Xian'er nodded her head. Of course, she understood this logic. However, in her heart, she felt that if the divine weapon was in her hands, their chances of survival would be higher. However, since her brother did not support her idea, she could only bury this idea in her heart for the time being. However, it was absolutely impossible for her to give up. Both parties seemed to be living in harmony for a few days. Lung Ruoxue had a better understanding of the mystic realm. However, she had yet to see a single one of the monsters that the other party was talking about. During the day, they searched for clues in the secret realm, and at night, they all went into their rooms to recuperate. Just like that, half a month's time passed quickly. Although third elder Chow had only lived in the house for half a month, the more he knew about the house, the deeper his desire for it grew. However, he did not dare to show it or reveal his thoughts to anyone. However, his attitude towards Fengde and the others was much friendlier. Every day, he would go to Fengde and the others and chat with them enthusiastically. He would inquire about the other party's news without batting an eyelid. But after a few days, he was disappointed to find out that he didn't get any useful information. On the contrary, he let the other party get a lot of information. Moreover, in order to win their trust, He almost told them about the Ciao family's background. This fact made him extremely depressed, but at the same time, he became more courageous. Feng De and the others enjoyed Elder Chao's enthusiasm. They answered all his questions, but unfortunately, they did not answer his questions. As the two sides continued to play the game of Tai Chi, they were getting closer and closer to a valley. Chapter 1728. Scheme 1. It was a valley in the shape of a. On all four sides, there were small mountains that were half the height of a person. In the middle, there was a flat and deep valley that was about 2 meters deep. The valley was full of unknown flowers and plants, and the scenery was particularly beautiful. Feng De and the others were amazed, but no one planned to go into the valley first. However, Cheng Xian and the others were somewhat eager to try. Let's go down and take a look, Cheng Xian said impatiently. Miss Cheng, we don't even know if this valley is safe, and you dare to go down? Feng De glanced at Cheng Xian from the corner of his eyes as he spoke with a hint of ridicule. There's no one around this valley. What's the point of going down to take a look? Cheng Xian said in a somewhat unconvinced manner. On the way here, these damn guys had always looked at her as if she was an idiot. Now, they were even directly mocking her. This was truly preposterous. Oof. If it wasn't for that divine artifact, would she, a young lady of the Cheng family's direct line, need to put up with their attitude? She thought indignantly in her heart, and the anger in her heart grew. If you want to go down, then go down, Feng De said lightly. He had no intention of stopping her. You guys aren't going down? Cheng Xian narrowed her eyes and asked in a slightly displeased tone. We didn't say we were going down, Feng De said matter-of-factly. I didn't expect you to be so timid. Cheng Xian roared in anger. These people didn't want to go down, but they were encouraging her to go down. What was the meaning of this? Did he want her to be cannon fodder? She hated it in her heart. At this time, she had long forgotten that she was the one who wanted to go down and pushed all the blame on Feng De. No choice. Who asked us to be weak? Feng De said disapprovingly. You bunch of cowards. Cheng Xian was so angry that she clenched her teeth. In her eyes, this Feng De guy was just a piece of meat with no end in sight. Although she hated him to death, she couldn't do anything to him. This fact made her quite depressed. It's human nature to be afraid of death, and we're no exception. At this moment, Lin Yuan also said, Miss Cheng, if you want to go down, then hurry up. It's a good opportunity for us to explore the way. Lin Yuan glanced at Cheng Xian, whose expression was somewhat unkind from anger, and urged her to add fuel to the fire. You guys, Cheng Xian was so angry that her face turned from white to red, then from red to black. The color kept changing like a palette. She took a few deep breaths and turned her gaze to Lung Ruoxue. Young Miss Lung, your subordinates are really useless. They're actually so timid. What's the use of having them? Cheng Xian's words definitely had the suspicion of sowing discord. However, Lung Ruoxue only smiled faintly after hearing this and said, Then what about what Miss Ching said? What should I do with them? If they were my subordinates, I would have abandoned them long ago. Such timid people who don't listen to orders don't deserve to stay by my side. Cheng Xian said with a face full of pride. Her head was held high like an arrogant peacock, so insufferably arrogant. I admit that they're timid, but I can't agree with you if you say that they don't listen to orders. When have they ever disobeyed orders? Lung Ruoxue's beautiful face was filled with question marks. Thanks, they don't even dare to go to the bottom of the valley. Aren't they disobeying orders? Lung Ruoxue's words stunned Cheng Xian, and she couldn't help but ask. But I didn't plan to let them go down, Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She was thinking in her heart, you're the one who wants them to go down, but you're not anyone to them. Why should they listen to your arrangements? Cheng Xian was ruthlessly choked by Lung Ruoxue's words. After a long while, she finally recovered and said, We're already here. How can we not go down and take a look? What if there's a fortuitous encounter? In fact, when she said this, she was not very confident, but she would not give up if she did not go down to take a look. What if something good really happened? Wouldn't it be a pity to miss it? Miss Cheng, We're not here to sightsee, nor for any strange encounters, so if you're interested in this valley, feel free to go down. We won't go down. We'll wait for you here. Lung Ruoxue said calmly, not at all moved by Cheng Xian'er's words. In fact, she didn't want to go down for a reason. Uncle Long had told her that there were people in the valley, but there were two different auras. One was human, and Uncle Long wasn't sure about the other. The other aura was intermittent and very strange. According to their guesses, it should be the monster that Cheng Xian'er and the others were talking about. Therefore, she didn't want to take risks. After all, the terrain of the valley was very unfavorable to them. If this was the nest of those monsters, they would be walking right into a trap. Thus, she had decided to wait and see. However, Cheng Xian'er had spared no effort in wanting to go down and take a look. This made her suspicious of Cheng Xian'er's motives. MMH, we'll be waiting for you here. After Fengde and the rest heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they quickly chimed in. You bunch of cowards, if I find anything good after I go down, don't you dare fight with me for it. Cheng Xian'er's pretty face was red with anger as she spoke with a look of disdain. Don't worry, Miss Cheng. Even if you find something good, we won't fight for it. I promise you on my honor. But if you're in danger, don't expect us to go down and save you. Lung Ruoxue said very seriously. She was used to saying the ugly words first. All right. Cheng Xian'er nodded. Just as she was about to go down, she was stopped by Cheng Yi. Xian'er, don't be willful. You're also not allowed to go down. Cheng Yi's face darkened as he spoke in an obviously unhappy tone. There were so many of them. If they all went down together, it would be fine. At least, they could look out for each other. However, Lung Ruoxue and the others had no intention of going down to the bottom. In that case, even if they all went down with Xian'er, there would only be 8 of them. If there were monsters in the valley, the 8 of them would not even be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Besides, Third Grandpa had not said anything, so his meaning was very clear. He could not let Xian'er take the risk. Big brother, don't stop me, or you'll go down with me. Cheng Xian'er requested. Xian'er, I want to go down, and I want to allow you to go down. Cheng Yi said stubbornly. I must go down. Cheng Xian'er's stubbornness was starting to show. She turned her head and saw Ning Haolon in the crowd. With a face full of anticipation, she asked, Brother Lan, are you willing to go down with me to take a look? As she spoke, she stared unblinkingly at Ning Haolon. Her beautiful eyes sparkled with excitement and other complicated emotions. Cheng Xian'er stared unblinkingly at Ning Haolon. At the same time, Fengde and the others turned to look at him in unison, waiting for his reply. Miss Cheng, I'm not interested in the situation in this valley. I'm sorry, I can't go down with you. Ning Haolon said with a smile. Chapter 1729, Scheme 2, Brother Lan. Even you don't want to accompany me? Cheng Xian'er's face was filled with resentment and disappointment. Her sparkling eyes immediately lost their luster and became dull. Lung Ruoxue was speechless at Cheng Xian'er's words. She thought to herself, young Master Ning has never accompanied you, okay? Moreover, from the way she spoke, it seemed like Ning Haolon was a heartless man. If it wasn't for the fact that they knew Cheng Xian'er was the one who was in love with him, those who didn't know the truth would have misunderstood Ning Haolon. In truth, just from the way they addressed each other, one could already tell something was wrong. However, most people would always have preconceived notions, pity for the fairer sex, and sympathize with the weak. As such, if this was outside, the one who would suffer in silence would definitely be Ning Haolon. Hence, at this moment, Lung Ruoxue felt a little sympathetic towards him. Weakness was a woman's most terrifying weapon, even if this woman was completely pretending. Miss Cheng, your words are so ambiguous. It will cause a misunderstanding. Fengde, who couldn't stand it, said indignantly, What does it have to do with you? Fengde's words caused Cheng Xian'er's reaction to be extremely intense. Her face turned green and black, and her angry face was somewhat distorted. Her heart was filled with hatred. It must be because these people were not willing to go down, so Brother Lan was not willing to go down. Otherwise, why would Brother Lan not accompany her? At the thought of this, she directed all her anger towards Lung Ruoxue and the rest. Her jealousy and hatred towards Lung Ruoxue grew. Jealousy was like a venomous snake, devouring the darkness in her heart. Cheng Xian sneered as she looked at Lung Ruoxue. A deep hatred flashed in her eyes, and then she jumped into the valley without any hesitation. Seeing Cheng Xian leave, the worried Cheng Yi also wanted to follow, but he backed out because of a single sentence from Cheng Xian. What a deep sibling love. Are you sure you want to go down? Cheng Xian's words caused Cheng Yi, who was about to descend into the valley, to stop in his tracks. Of course, he did not want to go down, but how could he not care about Xian? When he thought of the countless reminders and instructions his mother, who loved Xian dearly, had given him, he could not completely harden his heart, even though he sometimes hated this little sister who liked to cause trouble. Unable to make up his mind, Cheng Yi turned to look at third elder Chao, only to see the look of disapproval on his face. He was shocked. He knew that third elder Chao did not agree with his idea. In an instant, his thoughts of going to the bottom of the valley disappeared. It wasn't that he didn't care about Xian's life, but rather he needed the Xiao family to stand behind him more. Therefore, he couldn't make third grandpa unhappy. After all, third grandpa had a very high status in the Xiao family. What do we do now? Cheng Yi, who had calmed down, said shyly. Of course we're waiting for Xian to come up. Are we supposed to go down and invite her? Cheng Xian said with a smile. However, as soon as he finished speaking, everyone heard an ear-piercing scream from the valley. It was Cheng Xian's voice. Arg, help me. The voice was very loud and trembling, making everyone's hair stand on end. Something happened to Xian. Cheng Yi's expression changed, and he said nervously. However, Lung Ruoxue and the rest did not respond to his words. Most of them had turned their heads to the other side, while some looked up at the sky, not looking at him. Thanks, something happened to Xian. Cheng Yi said again, feeling even more anxious. After all, she was his sister. Even though he did not go down with her, it was impossible for him not to be worried. However, Lung Ruoxue and the rest did not make any further moves. Hearing the shrieking, he did not dare to go down alone. Hence, he could only stare at Lung Ruoxue and the rest anxiously. After a moment of silence, Lung Ruoxue slowly opened her mouth. Third Elder Chao, what are your plans? Lung Ruoxue asked in a carefree manner. Does young lady Lung have any good ideas? Elder Chao San asked instead of answering. If you don't go down to save her, I can guarantee your safety. But if you care about your family and insist on going down, then I can't do anything. Lung Ruoxue said honestly. Miss Lung and the others don't plan to go down. Elder Chao San, who understood Lung Ruoxue's meaning, asked unhappily. The situation in the valley is unclear, and our strength is low. Even if we go down, we'll only be courting death. So, I can't let my subordinates suffer any harm because of an insensible Cheng Xian. After all, it was Cheng Xian who didn't listen to our kind advice and insisted on going down to the valley to find some fortuitous encounter. If she really did have a fortuitous encounter, we wouldn't be jealous, but if she were to encounter danger, we would be powerless. I can only say that this is the path she chose, so she has to bear the consequences herself. Lung Ruoxue said coldly. Actually, it wasn't that she didn't want to save them. It was that she didn't believe Cheng Xian who was bent on scheming against her. If the noise just now was Cheng Xian's intention to lure them down, they would have fallen for it. Miss Lung, I know that Xian's words were a little inappropriate, but she's a girl after all. We can't just leave her to die. Elder Chao San's eyes flickered as he advised with heartfelt words. Third Elder Chao, Cheng Xian won't even share any of the benefits she gets with us. So why should we go and save her when she's in danger? Is this fair to us? At this time, Fonda said with a smile. In his heart, he despised Third Elder Chao's words and deeds even more. What kind of person is this? He didn't use his own divine emperor, but asked them, these weak deities to help him save people. He really took them for fools. Now is not the time to talk about fairness. After all, Sienna is one of us. If something really happens to her and we leave her in the lurch, it will only disappoint everyone. If this matter spreads, it will also damage our reputation. So, we didn't save her just because of her. Elder Chao San's mind quickly turned, and after a moment of silence, he persuaded. Third Elder Chao, look at our strength. Most of us are only at the God realm. Do you think we have the ability to go down and save them? If we can't save them and lose our lives instead, it's not worth it. Do you think we're stupid? Fengda laughed and said, doesn't young Miss Lung have a spatial god tool? If there's really danger, it'll be fine if we all go inside. Elder Chao San said, unwilling to give up. In truth, he didn't really want to save Chang Xian. He only felt that this opportunity was too good, and it would be a pity if he didn't make use of it. After all, he still had his eyes on the divine tool. If these people listened to him and went to the bottom, they would definitely die. In that case, wouldn't the divine artifact be at his fingertips? Even though his idea was good, how could Lung Ruoxue and the others let him have his way? Third Elder Chao, the situation at the bottom of the valley is unclear. If it's really as you said, there are thousands of monsters. I'm afraid we will be surrounded in the blink of an eye. Do you think we have a chance to enter the house? Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly, her beautiful face full of questions. Chapter 1730, Scheme 3, This. We won't know if we don't try. Elder Chao San said in embarrassment. If Third Elder Chao wants to try, then go ahead. I won't risk my life. Lung Ruoxue said impolitely. After she finished speaking, she took out her house and placed it outside the valley. She then walked straight in, while Fengda and the rest followed closely behind. Third Elder, what should we do? An elder from the CEO family said with a pale face when he saw Lung Ruoxue and the rest enter the house. He had already heard the sound of chaotic footsteps in the valley. Those monsters were probably going to leave the valley soon. Let's go in too. The third elder thought for a moment before speaking helplessly. He did not expect Lung Ruoxue and the rest to be so cold-blooded. Even Chang Xian did not say that he would go to the bottom of the valley to save Xian. This fact made him extremely disappointed. However, he could not force them to do something they did not want to do. When he thought of this, he felt depressed again. After the elders of the CEO family and Cheng Yi entered the house together, the door of the house was closed. In the garden, the CEO family's elders were uncomfortably in a corner, but their eyes were fixed on the screen in the garden. Through the light screen, they saw the monsters at the bottom of the valley climb out and surround the house. The densely packed monsters that were like small mountains made their scalps numb and their hair stand on end. Was this the monster in the secret realm? Lung Ruoxue also saw the true appearance of the legendary monster through the light screen. These monsters were neither human, ghost, nor beast. Their bodies were covered in fur, and their mouths were wide open. Saliva was flowing out of their mouths. It was impossible to tell what they were from their appearance. Lung Ruoxue could only describe them with one word: ugly. If she had to use 2 words to describe them, it would be disgusting. Oh my God, why do these things look like this? Fengda looked at the screen and said in disbelief. If the monster doesn't look like this, what does it look like? Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she teased. Even though there were many of these monsters, they didn't seem to be very powerful. Most of them were at the God Monarch realm, while a portion of them were between God tier and God tier. However, just the number of these monsters alone was enough to make one flinch. Hee, that's true. Fengda scratched his head and said in embarrassment. Their expressions were extremely relaxed, but the third elder of the CEO family and the others were somewhat upset. They simply couldn't be so calm and composed. They had personally experienced the horror of these monsters. Although these monsters didn't seem to be very strong, they were very difficult to deal with. Moreover, there were many of them. However, this wasn't the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that these monsters could not be killed and could resurrect infinitely. This was also the most terrifying thing. No matter how powerful the cultivators were, their shun power was not endless. Their shun power would be consumed, and there would be times when it would be exhausted. However, these monsters died and came back to life repeatedly. Who could bear it? Therefore, Fonda and the others' relaxed attitude was an eyesore in their eyes. AI, if they had such a divine weapon in their hands, the CEO family would not have fallen so easily. Many of the CEO family members who had fallen had been exhausted to death by those monsters. This fact made them extremely depressed, and it also made the CEO family's desire for this house even deeper. Thanks with this house, those monsters would not be able to enter at all. They would have more capital to protect their lives. At the same time, their opportunities in the secret realm would also be greater. With so many benefits, Third Elder Chow's heart burned with passion and excitement. His gaze towards Lung Ruoxue became even more passionate. No, he had to think of a good way to make these people go out on their own. Otherwise, if he missed such a good opportunity, he would regret it for the rest of his life. At the thought of this, Third Elder Chow took the initiative to walk to the side of Lung Ruoxue and the rest. He said with a heavy expression, "Miss Lung, although it is safe to stay in the house, in the long run, our food will also be exhausted. So, we had to find a way to get rid of those monsters as soon as possible. Third Elder Chow, even the weakest among you is a god king. Is there a need for you to care so much about food?" Fonda asked with a puzzled look after hearing Elder Chow's words. His meaning was obvious: you won't be hungry even if you don't eat. So why are you worrying about food? I'm just worried about you guys. Third Elder Chow cursed in his heart, but his words were very understanding. He knew that these people's 3 meals a day were very timely. It was impossible to make them eat less. Therefore, he felt that this was the best excuse. Many thanks for Third Elder Chow's consideration. You don't need to worry about our affairs. Special times call for special treatment. It's no big deal to skip a meal. Fonda said with a smile. Even if you don't care about food, it's not a good idea to hide in the house all the time. We can't just stay in the secret plane and not go out, right? Elder Chow San's mind raced as he thought of another reason that he thought was the best. What do you think, Third Elder Chow? At this moment, Lung Ruoxue asked as the third elder of the CAO family wished. Elder Chow San was secretly happy, but his face remained calm. Miss Lung, let's fight these monsters to the death. The reason why he made such a suggestion was because he was too confident in his own abilities. He believed that he would definitely be able to survive under the siege of those monsters. Once Lung Ruoxue and the others died, this divine weapon would belong to the CAO family. Third Elder Chow, what's the difference between fighting them and us going down to the bottom of the valley? Lung Ruoxue looked at the third elder of the CAO family with a puzzled expression. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anticipation, hoping that he would clear her doubts. Miss, of course there's a difference. The only difference is that we won't have to reach the bottom of the valley to be killed by them. Fonda sighed as he looked at the third elder of the CAO family with resentment. A 1T. If your lives are in danger, you could just enter the house. Furthermore, we will do our best to protect you. Elder Chow San hurriedly said, "Do your best to protect them?" When Fonda heard this, he wanted to laugh in his heart. Wasn't this statement a little too watered down? He said that he would do his best to protect them, but if they didn't do their best and killed them, would they become ghosts and come to the CAO family to settle the score? Thinking of this, Fonda's mouth twitched slightly, revealing a somewhat timid smile. Third Elder Chow, although you have the intention, we can't hold you back. So, there's no need to protect us. Why don't you go out and kill them yourself? With your strength, isn't this a simple matter? After he finished speaking, he looked at Third Elder Chow eagerly with an extremely expectant gaze, making the fire in Third Elder Chow's heart rise. Chapter 1731. Scheme 4. These cowards. He didn't dare to go out and court death, but he actually wanted them to go out. This was preposterous. Third Elder Chow's heart was filled with hatred. At this time, he was just like Chang Xian, forgetting that he was the one who had suggested this idea. The only thing on his mind was phone DA's evil deeds. Third Elder Chow, I'll leave it to you. Lin Yuan looked at the uncertain expression on the Xiao family's third elder's face and agreed. Miss Lung, what do you say? When the Xiao family's third elder heard the two of them echoing each other, he suppressed the anger in his heart and turned to ask Lung Ruoxue, do you want to hear the truth, third Elder Chow? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. Of course. Elder Chow Sin nodded. Then I'll say it. In fact, I also think that this idea is good. If we go out, we'll just be courting death. However, Elder Chow San and the others are all extraordinary. It'll be easy for them to go out and deal with these monsters. I am looking forward to it. Lung Ruoxue answered honestly. She didn't feel that her words were anything to be ashamed of. Since third Elder Chow wanted to get them out of here and harbored evil intentions, what was wrong with her giving him a taste of his own medicine? Lung Ruoxue's words rendered third Elder Chow speechless. Could he say, if you guys don't go out, we won't go out either? In reality, his main goal was to make Lung Ruoxue and the others leave the house. Only then would their accompaniment be worth it. However, who knew that the other party was as timid as a mouse and would not fall for it? This made him feel a sense of defeat. Third Elder Chow, I'll send you out. If there's any danger, they'll let you in immediately, I promise. Lung Ruoxue saw that third Elder Chow had not spoken for a long time, so she made a solemn vow. The expression on her face was also extremely sincere. When the demon saw Lung Ruoxue's expression, he was already laughing in his heart. Shuer was really cute when it came to scheming. However, he deserved it. Who asked these guys to have bad intentions? They dared to bully Shuer. Even if they died, he would not let them have an easy time. On the other side, the third elder was riding a tiger and couldn't get off. His face was filled with embarrassment, but Chung Xian-er's days in the valley were also not good. She had been captured after being discovered by the monsters in the valley. However, the monsters didn't kill her. Instead, they brought her to the hall deep in the valley. A middle-aged man in black sat on the throne in the hall. The man was tall and had ordinary facial features. The aura on his body was very powerful. At this moment, his expression was serious, and a trace of ruthlessness was faintly visible in his shrewd eyes. His tightly pursed lips revealed a trace of impatience. And now, Chung Xian-er was trembling as she knelt in front of him. At this time, Chung Xian-er was in an extremely sorry state. Her clothes were in tatters from the excessive struggle she had put up. Her head was lowered, and she didn't dare to look at the man on the throne. Who is the one kneeling? The middle-aged man said knowingly. Hearing this question, Chung Xian-er's body trembled even more. Her lips slightly moved, but she couldn't say a single word. Thanks, His Excellency is asking you a question. Don't pretend to be mute. At this time, a black-clothed man behind Chung Xian-er ruthlessly kicked her. With a plop sound, Chung Xian-er fell to the ground in a large arc. You're so bold. You actually dare to treat me like this. Do you know who I am? Chung Xian-er, who had been kicked to the ground, suddenly came back to her senses. The eldest Miss Temper had risen again, and she had even forgotten where she was. Ha! I don't care who you are. You're our prisoner now, so we're being polite to you. In a while, when we draw out your blood and drain your divine power, we'll feed you to those monsters. Your life will be over. At that time, you could go to hell and throw your missy temper. The black-robed man laughed maniacally as he spoke of Chung Xian-er's fate. No, you can't treat me like this. I am a young lady of the Chung family. You can't treat me like this. Chung Xian-er stammered incoherently after hearing the black-clothed man's words. A young lady of the Chung family? What was that? In our eyes, you're just a piece of trash that can provide us with fertilizer. As for your identity, it's useless to us. The man in black said sarcastically. Actually, what I wanted to say was, what was the miss of the Chung family? They had many humans whose status was above her. Hearing the black-clothed man's words, the fear in Chung Xian-er's heart grew even deeper. This was because the other party didn't care about her identity at all. What was she going to do? What do they care about? She thought hard. Take her away. At this moment, The middle-aged man on the throne spoke. Yes, yes, the black-robed man replied. Then he picked up Chung Xian-er from the ground and prepared to drag her out of the hall. Don't. Wait a minute. I have something to say. I'm sure you'll be interested in this. Chung Xian-er cried out in desperation. What else do you have to say? The middle-aged man on the throne narrowed his eyes and asked. The black-robed man who was dragging Chung Xian-er also stopped when he heard the middle-aged man's words. If I tell you, can you let me go? Chung Xian-er mustered up her courage and began to talk about her conditions. You're just a prisoner. You don't have the right to negotiate with me. The middle-aged man impatiently said in a cold voice. He then waved his hand, indicating for the black-clothed man to take Chung Xian-er away. Wait, I say, they'll say it. Seeing this, Chung Xian-er, who was prostrating on the ground, hurriedly said in fear, Quickly say it. Don't play mind games with us. Otherwise, if you anger His Excellency, you will die even faster. The man in black reprimanded. After he finished speaking, he kicked Chung Xian-er's body. I know someone who has a spatial artifact that can allow people to live in it, the terrified Chung Xian-er said in a spurt of energy. Chapter 1732. Hostage 1. When Chung Xian had just called out about this matter, the regret in her mind had disappeared in a flash. However, she then thought about it again. The fact that Lung Ruoxue had a spatial god tool that could accommodate people probably couldn't be kept a secret. With these mysterious people around, it would be even more difficult for her to obtain that god tool. Since that was the case, why not make good use of the god tool before it was exposed? At the very least, she had to find a way out for herself. Furthermore, she had to uphold the sour grape heart that if she couldn't obtain it, no other woman could. Hence, it was natural for her to betray Lung Ruoxue, a spatial artifact that can accommodate people. Are you sure? The middle-aged man on the throne asked with interest. Spatial divine artifacts that could accommodate people were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns in the divine realm. Moreover, in his memory, apart from that person who could casually make them, there were not many artifact masters in the divine realm who could make such spatial divine artifacts. However, those old guys in the Artifact Masters Guild should be able to do it. It was just that the materials to make such spatial divine artifacts were not so easy to gather. Otherwise, he would have asked them to make them long ago. I've been living there before, so I'm very sure. Chung Xian-er carefully said, Where do you live? It seems that someone you know has it. I really didn't think that the dignified young miss of the Chung family would be so despicable, betraying her own friend. The middle-aged man sneered. She's not my friend. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Chung Xian-er roared in a slightly crazed manner. Whether or not he's your friend, since you're living there, that person must be someone you know. But now you've betrayed him without hesitation. If I were him, I'd be completely disappointed in you. The middle-aged man sighed. In fact, what he hated the most was this kind of person who changed sides with the wind and betrayed others. Although he wasn't any better than this Miss Chung, this didn't stop him from hating her. Man doesn't do it for himself, and the heavens will destroy him. I only made the right choice. What's wrong with that? Chung Xian-er tried to argue. Actually, she wanted to say, even if I don't say it, you'll find out about it sooner or later. However, she didn't dare to say it, because once she said something like that, the bargaining chip in her hand would be gone. Growing up in a super family, she knew very well what was the most important to her, and Lung Ruoxue was her life-saving talisman. However, she didn't think about whether her so-called trump card would be useful to these people, or if she deliberately whetted their appetite, would they fall for it? In her heart, she had already determined that the spatial divine artifact that could accommodate people had an extremely powerful attraction, and no one could resist that charm. That sounds reasonable. The corners of the middle-aged man's mouth twitched, and he continued, Who does the divine weapon you speak of belong to? She had made the right bet. He was indeed very interested in that divine weapon. The owner of the divine weapon is a woman. She's not very strong, only at the deity level. If you can catch her, the divine weapon will naturally belong to you. Chung Xian suggested. In her heart, she was secretly happy with her suggestion. Oomph. Since she was caught, that damned woman wouldn't have an easy time either. Since she was unwilling to accompany her to the bottom of the valley, she would let these people go outside the valley to deal with them. She thought to herself and felt a little smug. If Lung Ruoxue was caught by them as well, she would be able to vent her anger. You only need to tell me who the owner of the divine weapon is. You don't need to command me. The middle-aged man listened to Chung Xian's suggestion, but his face didn't reveal a trace of joy. Instead, his face became stern. The middle-aged man's words caused Chung Xian's heart to skip a beat, and she immediately realized that she had made a mistake. However, she quickly adjusted her state of mind and forced herself to remain calm. The owner of the divine weapon is called Lung Shui. She's a rogue cultivator without any family. She's outside the valley now. Actually, Chung Xian didn't know what Lung Ruoxue's name was. She only knew that her surname was Lung. However, Chung Xian had heard that demonic man call her Shui, so she naturally thought that her name should be Lung Shui. Thanks to Lung Shui, she was indeed cold-blooded and disloyal. If that damned woman was willing to come down with her subordinates, she would not have been caught by these people. Right now, she had already pushed the blame of her capture onto Lung Ruoxue. Hence, her hatred towards Lung Ruoxue had deepened by another level. After Chung Xian finished speaking, the middle-aged man on the throne gave the black-robed man beside her a look. The black-robed man nodded and left the hall. A moment later, the black-robed man returned and nodded to the middle-aged man on the throne. At this time, Chung Xian, who was kneeling on the ground with her head lowered, had no idea that in just a short time, the other party had already gone out to verify and prove that what she said was true. However, the middle-aged man on the throne remained silent, which made her heart tremble with fear. Chung Xian kneeled on the ground, her heart in her mouth. The cold sweat on her body had soaked her already tattered clothes. At this moment, she had never felt so nervous before. This was because a single sentence from a middle-aged man could determine her life and death. However, the other party had remained silent. Take her away. After a long while, the middle-aged man slowly spoke. Yes, the black-robed man replied. Immediately after, he grabbed Chung Xian by her collar and prepared to take her out. I don't want to go out. I've already told you such an important thing. So please let me go. Chung Xian sobbed as she tightly hugged the pillar closest to her. No matter how hard the black-clothed man tried to pull her, she refused to let go. She was afraid of death, but she didn't want to die. She knew that once she left this place, she would have no way out. So, before she got the other party's promise, she would not leave this place. Let go. Otherwise, they'll just cut off your hand. The man in black threatened angrily. This woman actually caused him to lose face in front of the Lord. This was outrageous. He would not let her go. I told you such important information. Why won't you let me go? Chung Xian said in disappointment. Did I say that I would let you go if you told us about this? The middle-aged man's ordinary face finally revealed a smile. No, it shouldn't be like this. The middle-aged man's words dealt a heavy blow to Chung Xian, who muttered to herself. Why shouldn't it be like this? Even if you don't tell us, we'll still find out, right? The middle-aged man was getting impatient. He said to the man in black, as if he was shooing away a fly, hurry up and pull her down. Yes. The black-robed man's face was gloomy. With a thought, a long blade emitting a cold aura appeared in his hand. With a flash of a blade, a silver light quickly chopped toward Chung Xian's wrist. The corner of Chung Xian's eyes felt an unusual cold light, and she instinctively retracted her hand. The black-clothed man took the opportunity to pick her up and bring her out of the hall. Chapter 1733. Hostage 2. After they left, the middle-aged man on the throne waved his hand gently, and a light screen appeared in front of him. The scene outside the valley was displayed on the light screen. At this time, outside the valley, there was a small 3-story building. From the outside, it looked very ordinary and didn't have any extraordinary features. However, The middle-aged man knew that this small building was the spatial divine artifact that Chang Xian had mentioned. Looking at the unremarkable house, the middle-aged man's eyes revealed a trace of eagerness. In the entire divine world, there was no one who would not want to own such a house. Unfortunately, the value of this house could not be measured by money. However, he could not understand how the owner of this house could only have the strength of a god. Could it be that he was hiding his strength? After thinking of this possibility, the middle-aged man's expression became serious. He waved his hand again, and the light screen disappeared. The middle-aged man sat on the throne for a long time, deep in thought. A week later, Lung Ruoxue and the rest continued to stay in the house, eating and drinking as they should. The number of monsters surrounding their house increased, but they were unable to do anything to the sturdy house. They could only roar and rage outside, and use their bodies to ram against the walls of the house. Even so, the house was still as stable as Mount Tai, not even shaking in the slightest. With no other way out, the monsters went even crazier like trapped beasts. They let out deafening roars from morning to night and relentlessly hit the solid houses with their bodies. Fengde and the rest, who were in the house, treated their crazy actions like a joke. They would point at the monsters from time to time. In their boredom, they even organized a monster competition to determine the strongest and most physically fit monsters for the top 3. When Lung Ruoxue found out about this, she was speechless. In the garden of the house, the elders of the Ciao family looked at the crazy actions of the monsters through the light screen. They were very uneasy. They were afraid that these monsters would break through the defense of the house and rush in from the outside. The number of monsters outside was nearly 3 times that of the ones they had encountered. Other than feeling uneasy, Third Elder Chow felt even more grieved. Ever since a few days ago, he had been pushed into a corner by Lung Ruoxue and the rest. He had also thickened his skin and did not go out. He felt that he had lost even more of his status in the eyes of Fengde and the rest. Not only that, but they were also looking at him with slight disdain, which made him feel as if there was a dagger on his back. It made him feel very uncomfortable. However, when he saw the black mass of monsters outside, he really did not have the courage to go out. Therefore, he said, he had been very quiet for the past few days. "Miss, there are more and more monsters. It seems like we're trapped here." Fengde looked at the screen and frowned. "Yup, but what can we do?" There was nothing Lung Ruoxue could do against these ugly monsters. She had heard about their unique characteristics from the Ciao family's elder and knew that these monsters were unkillable. Furthermore, she believed that these monsters were only the tip of the iceberg in this secret realm. If they were to leave this house, they would be drowned by the monsters in the next second. Young Lady Lung, could it be that we are really going to be trapped in this mystic realm? An elder from the Ciao family who heard their conversation couldn't help but interrupt. "Do you have any good ideas?" Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked indifferently. When the elder of the Ciao family heard her question, he was so scared that he didn't even dare to make a sound. What happened to their third elder earlier was still fresh in their minds. Thanks, Lung Ruoxue saw that the elder had fallen silent and did not say anything else. Instead, she stared at the light screen in deep thought. No one knew what she was thinking. For a moment, everyone was silent. Without realizing it, Lung Ruoxue and the rest had been trapped in the house for almost a month. The elders of the Ciao family had slowly gotten used to it, but the monsters' tempers were getting more and more violent. Furthermore, they were becoming more and more unorganized, only knowing how to charge around. In the hall deep in the valley, a middle-aged man sat on the throne with a frown on his face. The expression on his face was dark and gloomy. When the black-clothed man beside him saw this, cold sweat began to flow down his forehead. Darren's silent and gloomy appearance made him tremble with fear. The more silent this Darren was, the greater the anger in his heart. Once this Darren was in a bad mood, the unlucky ones would be his subordinates, so he was under a lot of pressure. "Go and bring that woman from the Chung family here," the middle-aged man ordered after a long while. "Yes," the black-robed man replied, then turned around and left the hall. A few minutes later, Chang Xian was once again brought to the main hall. At this moment, Chang Xian-er's face was abnormally pale, and she was walking on air. Moreover, her originally bright eyes had become abnormally dull, and there was even a trace of fear in them. When she was still some distance away from the throne, Chang Xian-er knelt on the ground in fear. Her body was trembling like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind, and her head was very low. At this time, she was a lot more haggard than last time. She looked very thin and weak, and she was obviously not as lively as last time. It could be seen that she had suffered a lot during this time. The middle-aged man looked down at Chang Xian-er, who was no longer in her human form, and said indifferently, "Miss Chang, do you know why I called you here?" I don't know. Chang Xian-er replied in a low voice. "Miss Chang, have you seen our methods during this time?" The middle-aged man asked with a faint smile. When Chang Xian-er heard this, her face turned even paler, and her body trembled even more. She had witnessed that these people were all demons. She didn't want to recall what had happened during this period of time, but this man had to remind her. This fact made her feel sad and angry. She hated it. She hated these guys who treated them like beasts and kept them in captivity. The last time she was taken away from here, she was brought to a basement. There, she saw many people from other families. Although she didn't know most of them, they had a common thing to do there, which was to constantly eat blood-replenishing pills as food. After that, they were drained of their blood day and night. The blood that they shed was watered on a strange flower in a blood pool in the corner of the basement. The flower looked like a lotus, but it was not. The flower was red and gorgeous. She had never seen such a beautiful and bright flower in her life. However, the flower sucked blood, and it was her blood. Therefore, no matter how beautiful the flower was, it made her feel a deep disgust. The flower seemed to know what she was thinking. Every time it sucked her blood, it made her feel unbearable pain. After being tortured like this for nearly a month, she became thin and weak. Her mind was constantly in a state of tension. At the same time, the hatred in her heart had accumulated to an unimaginable level. She hated these demons, hated those beautiful yet vicious flowers, and also hated Lung Ruoxue. Chapter 1734. Hostage 3. If Lung Ruoxue and the rest had been willing to follow her down to this valley, she would not have been the only one suffering. In other words, she would not have had to go through all this. After all, Lung Ruoxue had such a divine weapon and would definitely be able to protect them. But now, she was the only one who was suffering all this. How could she not hate her? Even though she hated these demonic men in black, she hated Lung Ruoxue even more. Why was she suffering here while that woman was free? She didn't need to think to know that they were definitely hiding in the house now. This fact caused the hatred in her heart to gnaw at her heart like a venomous snake, and it also made the hatred in her heart grow and spread like wild grass. The middle-aged man's words caused Chang Xian-er's mind to spin. Fear, terror, and anger intertwined with each other. These intense emotions caused her to almost collapse. Moreover, she didn't quite understand the purpose of the black-clothed man's words. However, her mind was still tense, and her back was already soaked. She could only force herself to kneel in front of the middle-aged man. Looking at Chang Xian-er's pale face and her silence, the middle-aged man's mouth twitched, and he said in a soft voice, "Miss Chang, I invited you here to ask for your help." "Help with what?" Hearing these words, Chang Xian-er unconsciously raised her head. Her dull eyes stared at the middle-aged man, trying to see if he was telling the truth. "You've been suffering for the past month, but your comrades have been hiding in their houses and refusing to come out. They're even more unwilling to come and save you. Don't you hate them for being so disloyal?" The middle-aged man asked with a smile. "I hate," Chang Xian-er said in a low voice, a trace of anger flashing across her face. "Since you hate them, do you want to take revenge?" The middle-aged man tempted. "I want. However, I'm afraid I don't have that ability," Chang Xian-er said in disappointment. "What if I say I can help you? However, you have to think of a way to make them come out of the house. Otherwise, I can't do anything to them if they keep hiding inside." The middle-aged man said helplessly, I don't know how to get them out." Chung Xian stammered. She understood what the middle-aged man was trying to say. He wanted her to find a way to lure them out. However, she wasn't sure if those people would walk out for her. After all, other than her brother and the Xiao family, she didn't have a good relationship with Lung Ruoxue and the others. Furthermore, she wasn't a fool. She wouldn't give the middle-aged man random ideas. If it didn't work, she would be the one suffering again. Most importantly, she said she wasn't confident that Lung Ruoxue and the rest would be controlled by this middle-aged man because of her. She was well aware that she didn't have such a high status in that detestable woman's heart. What if I use you as a hostage to threaten them? The middle-aged man said. He could tell that Chung Xian was playing dumb, but he didn't plan to expose her. After all, he still had a use for this woman. I don't have a good relationship with them. I'm afraid they won't be fooled. Chung Xian said hesitantly, although she was also afraid that the middle-aged man would vent his anger on her. If she were to swear that Lung Ruoxue and the others were not tricked out of the house in the end, she was afraid that her fate would be even worse. Therefore, she did not dare to lie. However, in the ears of the middle-aged man, her words seemed to be an excuse. That means you have no value at all, the middle-aged man said angrily. Then, he turned to the black-clothed man beside him and ordered, "Take her away. From today onwards, there's no need to give her any blood-replenishing pills." Thanks, the meaning behind the middle-aged man's words was very obvious. He wanted Chung Xian's life. Thus, when Chung Xian heard this, she was so frightened that she hurriedly said, "Although I'm not sure if I can make them walk out of the house, I can give it a try. Please give me a chance." She didn't want to die. Although she was being sucked dry every day, at least she was still alive. Moreover, during this period of time, she had seen many people's tragic state after death. Not only were their blood and divine power all drained, but they also became food for those monsters. As long as she thought of this, the fear in her heart could not be suppressed and spread from the bottom of her heart. She was afraid of death. She did not want to end up like those who had no value. She even held a trace of expectation in her heart. Someone would come and save her. Since Miss Chung is so insistent, it would seem like I'm not being kind if I don't give you a chance to perform. They'll give you a chance, but you have to remember that a person with no value is a waste in my eyes. This kind of person is a waste of air, and the end of a waste is usually not good, so you have to treasure this opportunity. The middle-aged man said seriously, "I'll do my best," Chung Xian said through gritted teeth. "I'm looking forward to Miss Cheng's performance. Take her out of the valley." The middle-aged man instructed the black-clothed man beside him. "Yes," the man in black replied. Then he picked up Chung Xian like he was picking up a little chick and brought her out of the hall. The black-robed man brought Chung Xian and teleported out of the valley. When the monsters outside the valley saw the black-robed man, they actually made way for him. Their earth-shaking roars became even louder, as if they were complaining to their superior and venting their dissatisfaction. The man in black waved his hand to comfort them, and the monsters became as obedient as babies and quieted down. Following that, the black-robed man carried Chung Xian to the door of the house and threw her in front of him. He then loudly said, "You guys know this woman, right? If you're still hiding in the house and not coming out, they'll kill her." After he finished speaking, he kicked Chung Xian to the ground and stepped on her. "Save me." Chung Xian's tears flowed. The humiliated Chung Xian's heart was overflowing with hatred. Even though she did not dare to say that she was the most pampered young lady in the Chung family, she had always gotten whatever she wanted since she was young. When had she ever been humiliated like this? Especially in front of Lung Ruoxue and the others who she looked down on. This was even more unacceptable to her. At this moment, she secretly swore in her heart that if she could leave this place alive one day, she would not let any of these people go. She would pay them back double for today's shame. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the others who were in the garden of the house had also seen everything through the light screen. However, they did not make a sound or move. When Chung saw Chung Xian, who was being stepped on by the man in black, his expression changed and he shouted, "Xianer?" Chung Yi's heart ached as he looked at Chung Xian, who was as thin as a match and had a haggard expression. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. He had thought that Xian-er had long passed away. He had not expected her to still be alive. This fact made him extremely excited. However, looking at Xian-er's current appearance, she must have suffered a lot. Xian-er had never suffered like this in her entire life. For a moment, he felt guilty in his heart. Chapter 1735. Hostage 4. If he had been able to stop Xian-er back then, or persuade Lung Ruoxue and the others to follow Xian-er down to the valley, would Xian-er not have to suffer all this? He couldn't help but think to himself. Although Xian-er was a pain in the ass at times, she was still his sister. Seeing her in such a miserable state made him feel terrible. "Miss Lung, please save Xian-er." Seeing that Lung Ruoxue and the rest did not have any reaction, Cheng-Yi could not help but plead. "Lord Cheng, I'm only a deity. Do you think I can save Cheng Xian-er from the hands of that black-clothed man?" Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and questioned him unhappily. "I believe you will have a way." Cheng-Yi had flattered Lung Ruoxue. Now, other than Lung Ruoxue, he really did not know who else he could ask for help from. Furthermore, subconsciously, he also felt that Lung Ruoxue was the only one who could save his sister. "I have no choice. If even Lord Cheng, a god king, can't save your sister, then I, a god, can't even hope to do so." Lung Ruoxue replied emotionlessly. To be honest, she was a little angry. It was obvious that the other party was trying to lure them out, and if they went out to save her, the other party would definitely attack them without hesitation. It was impossible for Cheng-Yi to not see through the current situation, but he still wanted her to save her. Was he going to throw away the lives of so many people just for Cheng Xian? I'm sorry. Cheng Xian-er wasn't that important in her heart. It didn't matter if she was disloyal or if she didn't want to save her, but it was simply impossible for her to risk her life for Cheng Xian-er, who had plotted against her. "Mrs. Wright, young Master Cheng, please calm down." Feng agreed. He didn't have any thoughts of saving Cheng Xian-er at all. Moreover, Cheng Xian-er only had herself to blame for falling into the hands of the other party. Why should they take the risk for Cheng Xian-er, who they weren't even related to and had a bad relationship with? They weren't that kind of saints, were they? "If you don't want to help, then I'll go out and save them myself," Cheng-Yi said somewhat angrily. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked in the direction of the gate. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he was knocked unconscious by Lin Yuan. As they watched Cheng-Yi being dragged back to his original position, the elders of the Cao clan twitched their lips. They thought to themselves, these people are really heavy-handed. The dignified God King has actually been knocked unconscious. Third Elder Chao, what do you think about this? Lung Ruoxue turned her gaze towards Third Elder Chao and the rest, who had a grave expression on their faces, and asked, "Thanks, Miss Lung. Is there really no way to save Xian-er?" Elder Chao Sen asked, "What do you think?" "This is obviously a trap. If we go out, I'm afraid we'll fall into their trap. So, I don't agree to go out." Lung Ruoxue spoke the truth. Now that they were on the same boat, they naturally had to advance and retreat together. As for Cheng Xian-er, she could only pray for her own good. But Cheng Xian, Third Elder Chao hesitated. He knew very well that Lung Ruoxue was right. However, if he could save Cheng Xian-er, he would still want to do so. After all, Cheng Xian-er was of great use to him. At the very least, she could help the Cao family form a powerful in-law. So, he felt the pain of giving up on Cheng Xian-er just like that. However, as soon as he thought of the monsters gathered outside the house, his scalp went numb. The number of monsters was beyond his imagination, and he was not confident that he could retreat in one piece. Third Elder Chao, I also sympathize with Miss Cheng, but I can't risk so many of our lives. Moreover, you've fought with those monsters before, so you naturally know how difficult they are to deal with. So, you should know what our chances of winning are against so many monsters. Lung Ruoxue spoke frankly. She believed that these elders weren't stupid and would know what to do. Furthermore, as a member of a top-tier family clan, They would usually only place the family's interests above all else. As for family ties, they were nothing in their eyes. When family ties and family clans' interests clashed, they would choose to sacrifice their family ties. Although the other elders didn't say anything, Lung Ruoxue was well aware that they weren't willing to sacrifice their lives for a mere Chengxian. As cultivators, it was very normal for them to be indifferent to their blood ties. After all, with the age difference, it was almost impossible for them to value family ties like ordinary people. Moreover, Chengxian could only be considered half a member of the CEO clan. Lung Ruoxue's words caused Elder Chao Sand to go completely silent. The number of monsters had indeed caused him to forget and back off. Even at this moment, his desire to use those monsters to obtain this house had faded by quite a bit. Let me ask you, if a person's life could not even be guaranteed, then what was the use of having so much money? If one had money but no life to spend, one would not die in peace. Seeing that they had come to an agreement, Lung Ruoxue no longer paid any attention to the men in black who were shouting and cursing outside the door. As usual, they stayed in the house and did what they had to do. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. The black-robed man was still shouting and provoking outside the house, and his voice was mixed with Chengxian airs crying. However, Lung Ruoxue and the rest still ignored them. As for Cheng, ever since he had been knocked unconscious when he tried to leave the house to save Chengxian, he had become much more well-behaved, and had even stopped mentioning the matter of saving Chengxian. On a certain night, Cheng Yi, who was not sleepy at all, got up from the bed and tiptoed to open the door. He walked to the courtyard and looked around. Then, he opened the door and ran out without hesitation. Chapter 1736. Intense Battle 1. The reason why he chose to go out late at night was that, after careful observation, he found that everyone was already asleep at this time, so it was the most convenient for him to leave. He ignored the guilt that had flashed through his mind and consoled himself. He had done all this to save Xian. Xian was his sister, and seeing her suffer these days had cut his heart like a knife. However, he knew very well that Lung Ruoxue and the others would never allow him to leave the house. Hence, he could only pretend that he did not care for the past few days and successfully made Fengde and the others let down their guard against him. After much consideration, he chose to take action tonight. However, he didn't expect to be surrounded by the monsters guarding the gate as soon as he went out. When Lung Ruoxue noticed Cheng Yi's actions, she was in the purple bamboo house inside the bracelet with the demon. The moment she realized something was wrong, she immediately brought the demon out of the bracelet. Although it had only been a few seconds, it was already too late when they came out. This was because thousands of monsters had already entered the courtyard. Furthermore, there were still countless more monsters that were trying their best to charge into the courtyard. The moment Lung Ruoxue and the demon appeared, they were surrounded. Other than that, there were also monsters running toward the room. Lung Ruoxue's heart was filled with regret when she saw this. She shouldn't have been so careless and thought that everything was under her control. She shouldn't have let down her guard against Cheng Yi. It was her mistake, but she didn't want to hurt her grandfather and the others because of her mistake. Therefore, she blamed herself. It seemed that she had underestimated Cheng Yi's feelings for his sister. She didn't expect that guy to be a person who valued family. The reason why Cheng Yi could open his door and walk out on his own was also because she was too lazy. In the past, the people who lived in this house were all her own people. Therefore, in order to make it easier for them to enter and leave, she set the house so that anyone who could enter this house could enter and leave this house freely. Otherwise, they would look for her every time they entered and left this house, which would be troublesome. It was because of her laziness at that time that caused today's hidden danger. This fact made her deeply regret it. As she looked at the ferocious monsters surrounding them, Lung Ruoxue understood that a tough battle was about to be fought today. The sounds of fighting that came from nearby also let her know clearly that Fengde and the rest had already started fighting with the monsters. Just as he was thinking about this, Uncle Long ran into the yard with a steel fork in his hand and a small number of people. "Little girl, don't be afraid. Uncle Long is here, Uncle Dragon shouted. As he raised his pitchfork, the monster closest to him was crushed to pieces. However, in the blink of an eye, the crushed monster immediately came back to life. Uncle Dragon's eyes widened in disbelief. Then he stabbed the pitchfork at the monster again and quickly twisted his wrist. The monster was also crushed, but in the blink of an eye, the monster was back to life. Uncle Long didn't give up. After repeating this dozens of times, he was deeply depressed. These monsters were just like what the CEO family had said. They couldn't be killed at all. What should he do? Even though he was depressed, Uncle Long still used his steel fork to sweep away the monsters surrounding him. While they were resurrected, he quickly led Lin Yuan and the rest into the encirclement of the monsters and gathered around Lung Ruoxue and the demon. Little girl, are you scared by these ugly things? After guarding Lung Ruoxue's side, Uncle Long asked with a face full of concern. His bright eyes were staring vigilantly at the monsters that surrounded them. As long as these monsters dared to come close, he would not show any mercy with his steel fork. Thanks, I'm fine. Lung Ruoxue looked at Uncle Long, then turned her beautiful eyes to Lin Yuan and said, Is anyone hurt? This was what she was most concerned about. If the people around her were injured because of this, she would blame herself even more. Miss, we're fine, but the captain and the others aren't as lucky as us. They're still fighting the monsters that broke into their rooms. We're worried about you, so we're here to help you. Lin Yuan explained. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Lung Ruoxue was relieved. It was good that no one was injured. However, how are they going to deal with these monsters? According to Green Vessel's appraisal, these monsters were all made of flesh and blood. Although most of them were not very strong, just the fact that they could resurrect infinitely was enough to give people a headache. At this time, the voice of the man in black came from outside the door again. Ha ha! Enjoy the feast I prepared for you. They'll take care of this brother and sister for you. The man in black laughed proudly. Hearing the man in black's words, Lung Ruoxue knew that Cheng Yi had also fallen into his hands. Although she was a little angry at Cheng Yi for acting on his own initiative, she couldn't bring herself to hate that man. Although he had caused them to have to face the siege of these monsters, from Cheng Yi's point of view, he wasn't in the wrong. However, for the sake of Cheng Xian'er, he had put all of them in such a dangerous situation. This was something that she could never forgive. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue calmly provoked, What kind of skill is it to send these unkillable monsters in? If you have the ability, come in yourself. I'll go in by myself. This is your divine tool. If I go in, won't I fall into your trap and be forced to do whatever you want? I'm not that stupid. Besides, go to me won't work. I won't be fooled. The man in black said matter-of-factly. Any cultivator would know that it was quite dangerous to enter a divine weapon with an owner. The owner of the divine weapon could even manipulate them at will. So, how could he enter this house? Moreover, they were enemies. However, if you cancel the ownership and give this house to me, I can enter without hesitation. Huh? The man in black added. After he finished, he laughed wildly again. Did a donkey kick your head? Lung Ruoxue was rendered speechless by the man in black's wild imagination. She could not help but mock him loudly. However, after she finished speaking, she suddenly recalled that there was no such animal as a donkey in the god world. Donkey? What's a donkey? As expected, the man in black had a look of confusion on his face. However, for these words to come out of Lung Ruoxue's mouth, he did not need to think to know that it was not anything good. The donkey is your ancestor, Lung Ruoxue said in an unpleasant tone. When Lin Yuan and the rest heard their miswords, they couldn't help but laugh wildly. Ha ha! So you're a donkey grandson. Lin Yuan spoke very loudly, afraid that the black-clothed man outside the door could not hear him. Damn it, I won't let you off. When a man in black outside the door heard this, he immediately flew into a rage out of embarrassment. However, out of caution, he still stayed outside the door. However, the number of monsters that rushed into the house increased, and the door was completely blocked. Even so, the monsters still tried their best to squeeze into the courtyard, even if the courtyard was already full of monsters. Chapter 1737. Intense Battle 2. Don't just talk with your mouth. Come in if you have the ability. Lin Yuan also provoked. Oomph. Even if I don't go in, he'll still be able to take care of you. The man in black said confidently. After he finished speaking, he took out a silver whistle from his collar and blew it. The monsters in the courtyard started to move when they heard the whistle. After raising their heads and roaring a few times, they all started to attack Lung Ruoxue and the others in excitement. Seeing the monsters suddenly become even more excited, Lung Ruoxue knew that the whistle had taken effect. In an instant, a sword as thin as a cicada's wing and exuding a cold chill appeared in her hand. With a slight twist of her wrist, tens of thousands of fiery red cold glints shot out in all directions. Those cold glints were like shooting stars or phoenix feathers, beautiful and extremely dazzling. When the cold glints hit the monsters' bodies, many of them let out howls of pain. Awu, with their painful roars, their bodies were set on fire. In the blink of an eye, the monsters hit by the cold light were turned into ashes. After waiting for a few minutes, the monsters that had been turned into ashes were resurrected. However, their auras were much weaker after being resurrected, and their strength had decreased. Seeing this, Uncle Dragon quickly shouted, "They're afraid of fire. Those with fire attributes, attack them with fire. You must exterminate them." Lin Yuan and the others heard Uncle Long's words and personally witnessed the damage their meteor sword shower caused to the monsters. They also used all their skills and infused their own fire attribute divine power into their weapons, attacking the monsters along with the divine skill. In an instant, flames soared into the sky and a strong fire attribute aura floated in the courtyard. The monsters that were attacked saw that their bodies were on fire. Other than letting out a few howls, they did not turn into ashes like when they were attacked by Lung Ruoxue. Instead, they smacked out the flames on their bodies and pounced towards Lin Yuan and the rest with an angry aura. "Miss, our flames are useless against them." Lin Yuan, who nimbly dodged a monster's attack, took advantage of the gap and said gloomily, "Little girl, it seems like only your flames can harm them." Uncle Long was dumbfounded by the scene. Then he sent a message to Lung Ruoxue, "Little girl, let's keep those monsters busy and distract them. Quickly use your fire attribute skills to destroy them. If it doesn't work, burn them a few more times. We can't let them resurrect again, or else we'll die of exhaustion for just fighting them." And Lung Ruoxue nodded her head without a change in her expression. In her heart, she was quickly communicating with Qing Ju. "Sister, just use your natal divine flame. I don't believe that they'll be able to come back to life after being burned by your natal divine flame." Qing Ju did not believe this. Although his sister's life flame had not completely evolved into the chaos flame, the power of that flame was already not to be underestimated. It should be known that the chaos flame was the top flame that could purify all evil in the world. Under the burning of the chaos flame, no living creature could survive. He believed that no matter how mysterious these monsters were, they would not be able to escape the chaos flame, even if his sister's flame had not truly evolved into the chaos flame. "All right." Lung Ruoxue nodded her head. Previously, she had not added her own flames into meteor sword technique. Now, she would be able to test the might of the meteor sword technique that had been infused with her flames. Although she hadn't used the meteor sword technique for a long time, she liked it very much. The main reason was that when she used it, it was unbelievably beautiful. The meteors were like stars in the sky, and the brilliant brilliance was even more difficult to guard against. In her opinion, the meteor sword technique was more suitable for group attacks, especially when the enemy was these monsters. She didn't have to worry about hurting the innocent. Therefore, she didn't feel any pressure when she used it. Thanks as he waved his meteor sword technique, which was infused with his natal flame, a more dazzling flame than before leaped into the air. The flame was red with a hint of purple, and it contained a trace of heart-palpitating pressure. When Uncle Long saw this scorching flame for the first time, his expression froze as if he had thought of something, but he returned to normal immediately. After the flames appeared, The monsters couldn't help but feel a trace of instinctive fear deep in their hearts. This fear even made them have the urge to escape. However, before they could move, thousands of dazzling meteors arrived in front of them. The extremely high temperature directly scorched the monsters' hair. Then the meteor flames hit them. In the next second, the monsters that were affected by the meteor were all reduced to ashes. This time, they didn't even have time to let out a howl. After waiting for a while, they did not resurrect again. This fact made Uncle Long and the others heave a sigh of relief. The monsters that were still alive looked at Lung Ruoxue with fear in their eyes. Then, they covered their heads and fled like rats. Instantly, the courtyard was in chaos. Lin Yuan and the rest naturally would not let go of this opportunity to beat the dog while it was down. They waved their weapons and killed the monsters that ran to their side one by one. They resurrected and killed them again. In short, they could not let them run away. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue took this opportunity to take care of most of the monsters that ran into the courtyard. As the number of monsters in the courtyard decreased, some of them managed to escape. Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes scanned the courtyard and said to Uncle Long and the others, "Uncle Long, please take them to meet Fonda and the others. They'll go to the door to take a look." With that, Lung Ruoxue and the demon walked towards the door. At this moment, the monsters at the gate were panicking and fighting to be the first to run out of the gate. The men in black, who did not know what was going on, had big question marks on their faces. "What are you guys doing? Damn it! Who told you to run out like stray dogs? Go back and kill them," the man in black ordered. But at this moment, the monsters, who were still in fear, did not listen to him at all. Moreover, as the monsters secretly communicated with each other, the many monsters who accompanied the man in black outside the door also knew that there was a terrifying woman in the house who could take their lives. In an instant, the monsters were all in a panic. Looking at the monsters' reactions, the man in black was confused. Even he could not control these monsters that were panicking like headless flies. Damn it! What was going on? It was only when he saw an outstanding couple walking out of the house that he realized. So they were the ones behind this. "What did you do?" The man in black was hot-headed as he questioned her. At this moment, he had even forgotten about his enmity with Lung Ruoxue. He had never thought that these two people would be able to escape from the monster's encirclement so easily and even come to him. Now, he just wanted to know what the monster's reaction was. "I should be the one asking that," Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Chapter 1738. Intense Battle 3. That beautiful smile dazzled the eyes of the black-robed man in front of him, causing him to be in a trance for a moment. Seeing this, the demon was not happy. Without moving his expression, a black divine force as thin as a hair flowed out from his finger and went straight towards the black-robed man. The man in black didn't notice it at all. He only stared at Lung Ruoxue in a daze. It was only when he felt a pain in his waist and abdomen that he suddenly came back to his senses. Damn it! How could he be distracted at this time? The man in black was extremely annoyed. Then, he looked at Lung Ruoxue and the demon with extreme vigilance. After he came back to his senses, he clearly saw the fear of the monsters around him toward the two people. Only then did he realize how the two of them had escaped from the heavy siege of the monsters. This was truly too inconceivable. Could it be that they had some extraordinary means? At the thought of this, he grabbed Chung Yi and his sister into his hands and was prepared to use them as bargaining chips to threaten Lung Ruoxue and the rest. "Save me. Hurry and save us." Chung Xian-er, who was being held hostage, saw that Lung Ruoxue was completely unscathed, and the flames of jealousy in her heart burned even more fiercely. However, she still needed Lung Ruoxue to save her life, so she could only hide her jealousy in the bottom of her heart. When Chung Yi saw Lung Ruoxue, he lowered his head in shame. He was too embarrassed to ask for help. If it wasn't for him, Lung Ruoxue and the others wouldn't have been surrounded by the monsters. If it wasn't for him making the decision on his own, he wouldn't have fallen into the hands of the man in black and become a hostage. He wasn't sure what was going on in the house, but the thought of someone dying because of his selfishness made him feel guilty. Lung Ruoxue observed the siblings' completely different reactions without batting an eyelid. She laughed disdainfully in her heart. Cheng Xian-er's reaction was within her expectations. But Cheng-yi? What's the use of putting on a guilty look? If her flame had not become the nemesis of those monsters, she was afraid that they would have ended up like the Cheng siblings and become the prisoners of the black-clothed man. Therefore, although she did not hate Cheng-yi, it was impossible for her to forgive him and even pretend that nothing had happened. However, she would spare his life for the sake of the Cheng family's head. Let them go, and I'll let you live. After a long time, Lung Ruoxue finally spoke. However, her words were like a joke to the man in black. Ha ha, I didn't hear wrong, did I? You actually want to give me a way out? Don't you forget whose territory you're standing on right now? The man in black laughed maniacally, then mimicked Lung Ruoxue's tone. Hand over this house, and I'll let you live. We don't need you to give us a way out, Lung Ruoxue said with a smile that was not a smile. Now that she knew that her flames could kill these monsters and even prevent them from being revived, these monsters naturally posed no threat to them, let alone this man in black who only had the strength of a god king. You better not regret this. Lung Ruoxue's answer almost caused the man in black to lose his focus again. He subconsciously tightened his grip on the Cheng siblings in his hands. Don't worry, I won't regret this. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Thanks so, really? What about the two people in my hands? The man in black said proudly. It was great to have a hostage now. What happened to them? Lung Ruoxue played dumb. She couldn't help but sneer in her heart. Did this man in black think that she would compromise with these two as hostages? This pair of brother and sister didn't have that much weight in her heart. As long as you hand over the house, I'll let them go. Otherwise, they can only die. The man in black threatened. You think they're worth the price of my house? Let me tell you the truth. I'm not related to them. Do you think I'd trade this priceless house for them for two strangers? I want pay for their mistakes. So, if you really want to threaten me, you'd better think of a better reason and get a hostage with some weight. Otherwise, it'll be a waste of time. Lung Ruoxue suggested out of the kindness of her heart, and her words caused Cheng Xian-er to fly into a rage out of humiliation. Leave him to die? Why should I save you? I didn't agree to go down to the valley back then, but who was the one who insisted on going down despite the obstruction? And who opened the door and let those monsters in? What did a certain someone say when he reached the bottom of the valley? If I get something good, don't fight with me. What did I say back then? Miss Cheng, do you still remember? I said if you get something good, we won't fight with you, but if you encounter danger, don't expect us to save you. I was right, wasn't I? Lung Shui, how can you be so heartless? We're acquaintances after all. How can you leave us in a lurch? After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Cheng Xian-er questioned her with a face full of grief and anger. On the other hand, the black-robed man who was holding her revealed a trace of pride on his face and secretly thought, as expected of the daughter of a large family. Look at this eloquent and inexplicably disappointed little face. Those who don't know would think that she is really miserable. In reality, he agreed with Lung Ruoxue's words. Leave him to die? Why should I save you? I didn't agree to go down to the valley back then, but who was the one who insisted on going down despite the obstruction? And who opened the door and let those monsters in? What did a certain someone say when he reached the bottom of the valley? If I get something good, don't fight with me. What did I say back then? Miss Cheng, do you still remember? I said, if you get something good, we won't fight with you, but if you encounter danger, don't expect us to save you. I was right, wasn't I? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Now that Miss Cheng is in trouble, if we don't save her, we'll be leaving her in the lurch. But what if you find a treasure? Will you share with us? And Cheng-yi, did you think about our safety before you went out? Don't tell me you're trying to save your sister. I don't blame you for wanting to save my sister, but the price you paid for saving my sister was almost causing us to lose our lives. Now you think we still have an obligation to save you? I'm not a saint. It's already good enough that I didn't take revenge on you. And you still want me to save you? And you want me to use this house to exchange for you? This is simply a fool's dream. Lung Ruoxue continued. Her words made Chang Yi feel even more ashamed. He really did not have the face to ask them to save him, because when he opened the door of the house and left, he did not think about what they would do. He only wanted to save Xian so he had no right to ask her to do anything for him. Although Chang Yi thought this way, Chang Xian'er's thoughts were the complete opposite. In Chang Xian'er's heart, she was in trouble. No matter what the reason was, the other party should save her. If he didn't save her, then it would be his fault. She wouldn't think about the cause of the incident. She only knew that it was natural for the other party to save her. After all, she was a direct young lady of the Chang family. It could be said that Chang Xian'er's thoughts were not only self-righteous, but also quite arrogant. Of course, this was largely determined by her personality. Personality determined one's fate. This saying was indeed true. After Lung Ruoxue's words, Chang Xian shamelessly quibbled. That was then and this is now. I did say those words, but I didn't expect to be caught back then. So those words can't be counted on. Moreover, we are from the Chang family. Saving us will only be good for you, no harm. You must know that many people would love to curry favor with us, so you must cherish this opportunity. Chapter 1739. Intense Battle 4. Chang Xian'er's words were grand and majestic. Lung Ruoxue should have been angry after hearing them, but instead, it made her laugh. Ha ha! Miss Chang is indeed a young lady of a big family. You're so good at shamelessly saying such things. This little girl is really in awe. Lung Ruoxue sighed. Actually, after knowing that those monsters were afraid of her flames, it wasn't difficult for her to save Chang Xian. However, Chang Xian'er's words and actions were simply too infuriating, causing her to lose all intention of saving her. Furthermore, she was afraid that even if she saved her, she wouldn't be able to do well. In fact, Chang Xian might even think that it was only natural for her to do so, and that she was the one who wanted to curry favor with the Chang clan's young miss. Thinking of this, Lung Ruoxue felt a little conflicted. This Chang Xian wasn't her friend, and she was so annoying. If she really saved Chang Xian she was afraid that her heart would be filled with panic. However, she wouldn't deliberately try to kill Chang Xian. Forget it, let's just leave it to fate. She wouldn't take the initiative to save Chang Xian. If Chang Xian'er's life was strong enough to last until they exterminated all these enemies, then she wouldn't die. Thus, they could only count on Chang Xian and her sister's luck. I'm telling the truth. Chang Xian roared in anger. I'm not interested in whether it's true or not. Lung Ruoxue said coldly. Following that, she turned her gaze to the man in black and said, You've seen Miss Chang's performance. Do you still think that he'll use this house to exchange for the siblings? You're really not afraid that he'll kill them? The man in black asked, unwilling to give up. However, he was thinking to himself that it would be useless to threaten the other party with these worthless siblings. How did this happen? He was extremely disappointed. Whatever you want. I'm not a member of the Chang family, so I naturally don't care about their lives. Lung Ruoxue said heartlessly. If that's the case, I'll kill them now. The man in black shouted fiercely. However, after he finished speaking, he saw that Lung Ruoxue didn't even bat an eye. Seeing this, he was even more disappointed. With a thought, a long knife appeared in his hand. The cold blade was already close to Chang Xian'er's tender neck in the next second. He'd make his first move on this woman. It's all this woman's fault. Don't kill me. Young Master Big Brother, save me. The cold blade pressed against the skin of her neck, and the fear of death crept into Chang Xian'er's heart. She immediately screamed out in fear, but this time, she called out Young Master Big Brother. Lung Ruoxue was not willing to save her, but Big Brother Young Master would definitely save her. After all, they were all blood-related members of the Chang family. Big Brother Young Master would definitely not leave her in the lurch. After thinking about this, she cried out even louder. Big Brother Young Master, quickly come and save me. Chang Xian'er's hoarse voice was in stark contrast to her pale and weak face. Don't quarrel. The man in black roared impatiently. He pushed the blade in slightly, and in the blink of an eye, a stream of red blood flowed down the blade. Thanks, Arg. Don't kill me. I don't want to die. Young Master Big Brother, save me. Chung Xian screamed in fear. She knew that if this black-robed man said he would kill her, he would definitely kill her. This was because this black-robed man had long disliked her. However, she didn't want to die. At the thought of this, she struggled violently. However, the more she struggled, the deeper the blade went into her tender neck, and more red blood flowed out from her pale neck. Fuck! I said not to argue. The black-robed man's patience was exhausted. He pulled back the knife in his hand and directly stabbed it into Chung Xian-er's abdomen. In an instant, Chung Xian didn't even have time to cry out before her body softly fell to the ground. Xian-er, seeing this, Chung Yi's bloodshot eyes looked like they were about to crack as he screamed in pain. You siblings can reunite in hell. The man in black said angrily. People who had no value were not worthy of living in this world. So, he sent the siblings on their way. After saying that, the black-robed man sent a palm strike towards Chung Yi's dantian, shattering all of his internal organs. Chung Yi's eyes widened in disbelief, and he fell to the ground beside Chung Xian-er. It's your turn next. After killing the Chung siblings, the man in black shifted his gaze to Lung Ruoxue and the evil demon. Is that so? Lung Ruoxue laughed coldly, as if she had heard a great joke. I'll let you know what we can do. The man in black said confidently. Then, he gave an order to the monsters, kill them. Don't leave a single one of them alive. However, after he said that, the monsters only looked at each other. No one dared to move, and the fear in their turbid eyes became more and more obvious. Damn it, do you dare to disobey my orders? The man in black was furious. These monsters had always been very obedient, but now they didn't respond to his words. It was preposterous. He didn't understand the logic behind it, but in front of Lung Ruoxue and the others, these monsters ignored his orders. This made him lose a lot of face, and it also caused the anger in his heart to burst out. The man in black realized that direct orders were useless against these monsters, so he had no choice but to take out his trump card, which was the silver whistle. This was the best weapon to control them. After the whistle was blown, the monsters on the scene instinctively started to roar at the sky again. They were ready to move, but the fear in their hearts could not make them charge around like before. However, with the whistle, they could not fight back. Tutu. Whoosh. Seeing that the monsters were not so obedient, the man in black blew the whistle again. Chapter 1740. A Scourge Lives for 1,000 Years 1. This time, the whistle was loud and sharp, completely different from the previous ones. When the monsters heard the whistle, they immediately went crazy. Their eyes turned blood red, and a ruthless aura exploded from their eyes. They looked at Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer with a murderous look. In the next second, the monsters surrounded them. Lung Ruoxue's eyes flashed with understanding as she looked at the monsters surrounding them. She knew that the whistle had caused these monsters to lose their minds. They had gone mad and were now a group of fighting machines that were not afraid of death. Their target was her and the demon. Shuea, be careful. The demon reminded them softly. His eyes that were as bright as the stars were vigilantly staring at the monsters that surrounded them. Evildoer, there are so many monsters here. I wonder if the two of us can handle them. Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of worry as she pretended to be afraid. Ha ha, you're all going to die today. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the man in black rushed to reply. The expression on his face became more and more smug. Is that so? Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. One arrogant fellow. However, this was good. She liked stupid opponents like this. It didn't take too much effort to deal with them. Of course, the man in black was extremely pleased with himself. He looked at Lung Ruoxue with a pitiful gaze and said, if you surrender and hand over the house, I might let you live. Otherwise, you're dead. Really? Lung Ruoxue asked with a look of disbelief. Of course, as long as you surrender. The man in black nodded. But I don't believe you. What should I do? Furthermore, I have no intention of surrendering. Lung Ruoxue pretended to be in a difficult position. You dare to play with me? The man in black was furious. This damn woman actually played him like a monkey. How preposterous. Humph. Since there was a way to heaven, but you didn't take it, and there was no door to hell, but you insisted on coming in, then don't blame him for not knowing how to be tender to women. After the man in black had made up his mind, he blew the attack whistle again. Instantly, the monsters that had surrounded Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer began their ferocious attack. These monsters had completely lost their rationality. Pain and fear had long since left them. Even though the flames on Lung Ruoxue's hands would still cause them irreparable damage, they no longer had any fear in their hearts. The only thought in their minds was to attack. He had to exterminate these humans, because that was the most important mission in their lives. These monsters that did not care about pain and had no fear in their hearts gave Lung Ruoxue and the demon a headache. The two of them stood back to back and used their divine skills to attack the monsters in front of them. At the same time, they also had to split a part of their attention to pay attention to the black-robed man's every move. When the black-robed man saw the red and purple flames from Lung Ruoxue's hands, his eyes narrowed. He understood what was going on. No wonder those monsters were so afraid. The flames in this woman's hands were so powerful. What kind of flames were those? His curiosity was piqued. Those monsters were immortal monsters created by his lord. They could resurrect infinitely. However, after being attacked by the woman, they could no longer survive. This fact made him extremely frightened. As he watched the monsters decrease little by little, he had a bad feeling in his heart. If this continued, these monsters would be killed by this woman. Was this good? The man in black was getting anxious. While Lung Ruoxue and the demon were busy dealing with the monster, he quickly shot a ray of black divine power at Lung Ruoxue. Thanks, little girl, be careful. Uncle Long, who was rushing towards the door, immediately warned the man in black when he saw the sneak attack. He then increased his speed and ran towards Lung Ruoxue. However, before Uncle Long could get close, the demon quickly released his divine power. The two black divine powers instantly entangled with each other. Then, the demon turned his gaze towards the black-robed man. Little brat, leave this guy to me. Uncle Long, who had rushed to the side of the two, half squinted his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile. He actually sneak attacked the little girl. How preposterous. After saying that, Uncle Long held the steel fork and stabbed it at the man in black. Seeing this, the demon continued to fight the monsters beside him. Not long after, Fengde and the others also ran out of the yard and fought with the monsters. Although they couldn't kill the monsters, they could distract them and reduce the pressure on the Mississippi. With Fengde and the rest holding the monsters back, Lung Ruoxue was able to use her meteor sword technique more efficiently. She injected even more of her natal flames into her sword. In an instant, a burning cloud of fire floated in the air. The scorching temperature made everyone feel as if they were in a furnace. Following that, they smelled a burning smell. Then, thousands of fiery meteors rained down on the monsters from all directions. Wherever the fire meteor shower went, a sea of fire would be set ablaze. Although Fengde and the others were still some distance away from the sea of fire, they could not withstand the scorching temperature. They immediately gave up on fighting the monsters and jumped out of the battle. This great ant's fire is really powerful. Cheng Xian, who was drenched in sweat, wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, unable to take it anymore. If I'm not strong, how can I kill these monsters? Fengde rolled his eyes at Cheng Xian and said angrily. In fact, he was purely venting his anger. After all, Cheng Yi, who caused them to fight these monsters, was also a member of the Cheng family. If Cheng Yi had not opened the door, they would not have had to face these monsters head-on, so he put all the blame on Cheng Xian. Cheng Xian didn't know what to say. Fengde seemed to have something against him. Poor him, he still didn't know that he was someone else's scapegoat. What's with the If you do, it'll throw you into the river to feed the fish." Feng glared at Cheng Xian. Hearing these familiar words, Cheng Xian wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and thought to himself, "You and that fish are really a family. You learn really fast." Although he knew that Feng De wouldn't really throw him into the river to feed the fish, he didn't know why Feng De was in a bad mood, so he decided not to provoke them at this time. Otherwise, he would be the one in trouble. He was the disadvantaged group. He was living under someone else's roof again. That, him fighting those monsters alone. Isn't it bad for us to watch from the side? Cheng Xian thought for a moment and changed the topic. Who said that Miss is alone? Don't you see that Leader Yi is also killing those monsters? When Lin Yuan heard this, he could not help but ask, "What I mean is, should we go and help?" Cheng Xian sighed and said helplessly, "Who said that he didn't see it?" However, that evil man wasn't really fighting the monsters, but he was preventing them from disturbing his great aunt, just like what they had done before. However, they couldn't stand the high temperature of the flames, so they had to leave the battlefield. Thinking of this, he was so impressed by the evil man that he could actually stand such a hot temperature. Chapter 1741. A scourge lives for 1,000 years too. Help? Was he not helping? Just stay here obediently. Keep your eyes wide open and don't let those monsters get close to Miss. Otherwise, if they hurt Miss, Leader Yi will go crazy. Feng De said with a hint of disdain and reminded him. Then he'll go and help Uncle Long. Cheng Xian mumbled in a low voice. Uncle Long's opponent was a human, so he had no pressure dealing with him. If you want to go, go. No one's stopping you. Feng De said with a smirk. He couldn't help but think to himself, why would Uncle Long need your help? It's really unnecessary. Besides, he's sure that Cheng Xian will definitely be scolded if he goes. Then he'll go, Cheng Xian said quickly. He really didn't want to be looked at with contempt by Feng De and the others. That would make him feel like he had a mountain of pear blossoms on his back. After saying that, Cheng Xian ran toward Uncle Long as if he was running for his life. He shouted, Uncle Long, he'll help you. Uncle Long, who was playing with the man in black, immediately pulled a long face when he saw Cheng Xian suddenly join the battle. He thought to himself unhappily, why is this brat here to cause trouble instead of just watching from the side? However, before he could speak, the man in black spoke first. What's wrong? Are you trying to bully me with your numbers? The man in black said with slight disdain after seeing Cheng Xian. Using numbers to bully the few? Do you think I need to bully you with numbers? Uncle Long couldn't help but ask. When he was fighting with the man in black, he had been trying to find out more about him, so he hadn't used his full strength. Now that Cheng Xian had suddenly joined the battle, the man in black had misunderstood him as bullying him with numbers. How preposterous! Wasn't this the case of the wicked complaining first? Aren't you guys using your numbers to bully the few now? The man in black told the truth. Oh, really? I don't think so. Uncle Long asked in confusion. There are two of you, and him alone. How dare you say I'm not bullying you with numbers? The man in black was a little angry. This middle-aged man alone was already hard enough to deal with. Now, there was another guy who was stronger than him. How could he fight? You're wrong. You're not alone. They're all your helpers. Uncle Long looked at the man in black, then pointed at the monsters. That's right. If we're talking about numbers, you're the one who's bullying us. Cheng Xian smiled and agreed. You, the man in black, was speechless. He admitted that he had quite a number of monsters on his side. However, those monsters had been sent out to deal with Lung Ruoxue. How would they have the chance to help him? Furthermore, those monsters had completely lost their minds. Other than knowing that Lung Ruoxue was their enemy, their minds could not take in any other commands. Naturally, they would not listen to his summoning either. Who asked him to use his trump card earlier? He could only use his trump card once a day, so he no longer had the chance to make the monsters listen to his command. Thinking of this, he was filled with regret. What about us? Uncle Long, you should rest for a while. Leave this black-clothed man to me. Cheng Xian said with a smile. You little brat, you want to snatch her from me? Uncle Long glared at him and said unhappily. He had finally met a normal human, But this Chung family's kids still wanted to snatch him away. He really didn't know how to respect the elderly. No, I'm just afraid that you'll be too tired. Chung Xian, who felt a chill down his spine, quickly said, Thanks, I'm not tired of dealing with such a small thief, kid. Go play in the mud, be good. Uncle Long coaxed. After that, he kicked Chung Xian out of the battle circle between him and the man in black. Then, he started to tease the man in black. Chung Xian, who had almost fallen to the ground, was so depressed that his facial features were twisted together after hearing Uncle Long's words. Woo, he's already so old, but he's still being asked to play in the mud. This is too much. He doesn't even know how to use a better reason to coax me. Chung Xian returned to Feng Da's side, full of dissatisfaction and grievances. Young Master Chung, there's mud over there. You can go play. Feng Da pointed to a small corner with a smile. The crowd burst into laughter. Chung Xian's face flushed red, and he gritted his teeth as he glared at Feng Da. He didn't dare to mess with Uncle Long, but did that mean he didn't dare to mess with Feng Da? Woo. Thinking about it, he really didn't dare to offend Feng Da, because this guy was Lung Ruoxu's man. If he offended him, Great Aunt would definitely not let him off. Why was he so pitiful? Not only was there no one to dote on or love him, but he was also bullied by these people everywhere. The more Chung Xian thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. Slowly, his eyes actually turned red, and tears began to well up in his eyes. Feng Da and the others were surprised to see him like this. Young Master Chung, are you going to cry? Of course not. Why do I feel like crying? Chung Xian said, a little embarrassed. He had only said it on a whim. As a man, it was impossible for him to not be able to take such a small blow. Hee hee. It's good that you don't want to cry. Otherwise, we'll have to spend a lot of effort to coax you. You're not a weak little white flower. We really don't want to coax you. Feng Da said with relief. You want to coax a weak little white flower? Chung Xian rolled his eyes and said in a speechless manner. Of course, which man doesn't like to have tender feelings for women? Feng Da said matter-of-factly, not noticing that there was something wrong with Chung Xian's question. After he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a cold breeze behind him, and then he heard a strange voice behind him. So you like to have tender and protective feelings for women? He liked weak little white flowers. I've known you for so long, but I only found out today. Lu Tao's face was black as she stood behind Feng Da and said coldly, Arg, Tao Tao, you've misunderstood. I don't like little white flowers, and I don't like to have tender feelings for women. If I have to pity someone, they'll only pity you. Hearing this unfriendly tone, Feng Da quickly turned around and glared at Chung Xian, who was laughing very happily with hatred in his heart. That hateful guy, he actually dared to trick him and caused his Tao Tao to misunderstand. Sob, women are scary when they're jealous. What should I do? Feng Da was in a daze. He peeked at Lu Tao uneasily like a little wife. His hands kept twisting the corners of his clothes, and cold sweat kept dripping down his body. Whoa, I'm dead for sure this time. He did not know how Tao Tao would punish him. He felt very uneasy. Don't be talkative. Miss always said that if a man's words could be trusted, even a sow could climb a tree. I think he was talking about you. Besides, even if you have any dirty thoughts in your hearts, can't you see what time it is now? Miss is fighting those monsters to death for us. You guys actually still have the time to joke around here. I think you've really had enough of living. You should really let those monsters eat all of you men, so that you won't harm women in the future. In her anger, Lu Tao overturned the entire boat, including all the men. When Ning Haolan and the others, who had been shot innocently, heard Lu Tao's words, they all looked at Feng Da with resentment. The meaning on their faces was obvious. You're the one who caused this trouble, so you have to settle it yourself. Chapter 1742. A Scourge Lived for 1,000 Years 3. Tao Tao. Feng Da looked at Green Peach with a pitiful expression. You're on your own. Lu Tao didn't give Feng Da a good look. After she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Feng Da saw this and quickly chased after him. AI, poor captain. He's going to have a hard time this time. Lin Yuan looked at Feng Dace back and said with a little sympathy, "The few maidservants beside the young lady, except for Cuizhu, were more difficult to deal with than the other, especially Grape and Green Peach. They were two tigresses, and they did not dare to provoke them easily. However, the captain's slip of the tongue had caused eternal hatred. This time, Green Peach would not know how to torture Captain. However, the main culprit seems to be someone else." At this thought, he turned his gaze to Cheng Xian. Why are you looking at me like that?" Cheng Xian, who was being stared at until his hair stood on end, said fearfully, "It's nothing. I'm just thinking, if Captain is unlucky, will you have a good life? To tell you the truth, we're all very vengeful." Lin Yuan kindly reminded, "Then what do we do?" Hearing this, Cheng Xian was a little scared. "Cold, I wish you good luck." After Lin Yuan finished speaking, he ignored Cheng Xian. The poor young master of the Cheng family was frightened by Lin Yuan's words and had been in a state of fear and trepidation. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue was getting more and more comfortable dealing with the monsters. As the number of monsters around her decreased, Lung Ruoxue actually felt that it wasn't satisfying enough anymore. Furthermore, she had discovered the most energy-saving method to deal with these monsters. She would first lure these monsters together, then close the door and beat the dogs up. After she sent a voice transmission to the demon complied with her request and chased the monsters in one direction so that it would be easier for Lung Ruoxue to exterminate them. When Lin Yuan and the rest saw this, they also got to work. Not long after, most of the monsters were gathered in one place. Lung Ruoxue took the opportunity to quickly increase the power of her meteor sword technique. At the same time, she poured even more of her natal flames into her sword. Following that, countless burning phoenix feathers flew towards the monsters. The monsters that didn't have the time to wail were turned into ashes. After that, Lung Ruoxue quickly released 2 fire dragons that were condensed from her divine power. The 2 fire dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they danced in a circle in the air. The remaining monsters were all reduced to ashes. After taking care of all the monsters, Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes turned towards Uncle Long and the man in black, who were still in the middle of a battle. Uncle Long's strength was clearly not on the same level as the black-robed man's. Of the 2 people fighting, Uncle Long was dealing with them very easily, while the black-robed man was already panting and out of breath. "Uncle Long, stop playing. Quickly end the battle." Lung Ruoxue urged him helplessly. "All right, but, little girl, do you want her to live or die?" Uncle Long asked as he fought. "Just kill them directly. I don't need him to be alive." Lung Ruoxue said with slight disdain. "Yes, sir," Uncle Long replied with a smile. Thanks, the man in black, who was busy fighting with Uncle Long, almost vomited blood when he heard their conversation. However, the next second, he died under Uncle Long's steel fork without even having the time to leave a last word. After killing the man in black, Uncle Long came to Lung Ruoxue's side and said with a serious expression, "Little girl, I thought you would let him live. Maybe we can get some useful information from him." "There's no need. I already know most of what I need to know," Lung Ruoxue said confidently. Ever since they left the courtyard, she had arranged for Qing Ju to read this fellow's mind. However, this fellow did not know much, so she did not get much useful information. Really, when Uncle Long heard Lung Ruoxue's words, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. It seemed like this little girl had quite a few tricks up her sleeve. He's just a small fry. He's not of much use." Lung Ruoxue nodded. "That's true. This black-clothed man's strength is truly too low." Uncle Long said, a little unsatisfied. "Uncle Long, do you want to go to the bottom of the valley to take a look?" Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she asked. "All right. It's also a good opportunity to see if there are any good opponents." Uncle Long agreed. "You guys want to go to the bottom of the valley?" At this moment, a cry of surprise rang in their ears. When Lung Ruoxue and the rest heard it, they turned around. "Third Elder Chow, how's your situation?" Lung Ruoxue looked at the 3rd elder of the Cao family, who was in a sorry state, and asked with concern. "Yeah, it was a long story. Of the 6 elders of the CAO family, 4 are dead and 1 is seriously injured. Elder Chow San said with a sorrowful expression. He hated those monsters to death. How did this happen? Lung Ruakshu's face was filled with confusion. The elders of the CAO family were definitely stronger than those monsters. Even if they couldn't kill those monsters, they shouldn't have been killed by them. She could not understand. I don't know why, but those monsters went berserk and attacked us one by one. Those elders fought against 100 of them, but they couldn't fight them and all died. As Elder Chow Sin spoke, tears streamed down his face, and he choked on his sobs. Third Elder Chow, my condolences. Lung Ruashua consoled. She understood now. Those few elders were killed by the monsters after the frenzy. This could only mean that they were unlucky because at that time, most of the monsters were targeting her and the demon. She didn't expect that there would be monsters targeting the CAO family's elders. AI, that's right. After you killed these monsters and black-clothed men, did you save Xian and Yi? How are they? Elder Chow San sighed heavily and asked again. He really didn't expect that Miss Lung could deal with those unkillable monsters. If he had known earlier, he would have followed her closely. It would have been better than the loss of several elders in the CAO family. He really regretted it. Those elders were equivalent to being killed by him, who asked him to have a trace of luck in his heart. They were killed by this man in black. Lung Ruashua pointed at the man in black. He's dead. After listening to Lung Ruakshu's words, Elder Chow San was lost in thought for a moment. Then, he ran to Chung Xian and Chung Yi's corpses and started to wail. Woo-woo, Xian you all died so miserably. How am I going to explain this to the Chung family? I can't see them, and am too ashamed to face the ancestors and ancestors of the CAO family. I'm a sinner of the CAO family. Elder Chow Sin cried as he shouted, causing Lung Ruashua to frown. This old man really made her speechless. She didn't usually see him like this Chung family brother and sister much, and even gave them a hard time. Now that he knew that they were dead, he cried so sadly. Those who didn't know would think that the dead were his descendants. In fact, apart from having half the CAO family's blood flowing in them, the Chung siblings had no relationship with him at all. In that case, who was this old man showing this to? Lung Ruashua couldn't figure it out, but they wouldn't feel much anyway. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.